When we say housing, usually we think about where people sleep, but it's everything. So today we are here to talk about this conversation, and I think the GIPC and the UNDP deserves a round of applause for putting this together. And to start us off, I'd like to invite a man I've described on radio as a change maker. I pay attention to a lot of the state agencies. You look at institutions like the GIPC, look at institutions like GEPA, you look at institutions like Petroleum Commission, FDA, you look at institutions like DVLA. Over the past 5, 6, 7 years, we've seen change. The idea of GIPC being a catalyst for national development is known to all of us. Over the years, we are told FDI is 200 million, 500 million. Then the last time I read your report, I was seeing $2 billion and $3 billion. And you try to do business with GIPC, and you see that it's properly laid out and structures are working. I think it's just fair that we acknowledge the GIPC and the growth we've seen so far with a round of applause, whilst we invite Mr. Yofi Grant to come and give us the welcome address. Please, Mr. Yofi Grant.
Thank you very much. Very cherished program director. And a very good morning to all of you. I think we are in a very interesting time in the world. But I would like to recognize the presence of some important, very important people who have joined us to engage in this conversation. And of course, if those who attended the last SDG Roadmap event, you would remember the Deputy UNDP resident representative, and he says we should just call him Sukrob for short, because his surname is pretty interesting. But I always try to still see the surname. It's Koshmukamedev. Koshmukamedev. So I'm not too bad. So thank you very much for coming. And then we also have Mr. Dela Zumanu, who is the CEO of the National Home Ownership Fund. Mr. Kwame Banier, who is a managing partner, KPMG Risk Consulting. Kojo Saka, the CEO of Saka Homes, an emerging home development company. And my own very good friend, Reverend Stephen Osei, the Director of the Ministry of Works and Housing. And then we also expect Eva Menz, who is the Director and Coordinating Director, Technical Input at the Ministry of Finance. And of course, Sylvia Sesu, who is the UNDP Economic Analyst. Today's topic, as the MC said, is very important for us, and for many reasons that he himself stated. It impacts on health, it impacts on infrastructure development, it impacts on human activity, it impacts on education, and I recently came from a trip, and a friend of mine who's been working out there made quite a lot of money, told me that he was moving homes. And so in my typical Ghanaian mind, because I knew he was very wealthy, I said, oh, so you're going to look for one of those big 5-bedroom houses. He said, no, that's not at all what is the defining, factor. So I said, what is it? He said, my children's school. I need a home that is close to my children's school, no matter how small or big it is. And it just dawned on me that, yeah, sometimes we think of housing only as the shelter over our heads. But it has great connectivity to other parts of human endeavor and the things we do. So today we are here to engage in this conversation to see how best we can facilitate opening up the opportunities that exist. And yes, the opportunities do exist. As you heard earlier on, there's a housing deficit, a huge housing deficit. And there are all indications that every year that deficit increases. But yet delivery is woefully inadequate. And so we have a problem. Not only is the deficit growing yearly, but the supply is very limited. Secondly, there's a concern about finance for homes and housing. And we do not have a big enough mortgage industry that can support people to acquire homes. The fundamental problem with that is there's very little room for long-term capital in financial institutions to finance homes. So many institutions have not gone into mortgages. But I can assure you that in the very near future, the coming future, because of a new direction by the ministry in charge, we're going to see some big mortgage players come into the market. Secondly, you may not know this, but Ghana has one of the fastest growing middle class sectors of the economy. And so that in itself is an attraction for mortgage companies to come in and support home acquisition, as well as development of properties and development of cities, etc., etc. Then, of course, there's the perennial problem of land acquisition and land tenure. And despite government's efforts to digitalize land addressing such that every 5 by 5 meter squared piece of land in Ghana has a digital address, we still face situations where one piece of property can be sold 3 times, and yet you don't know whether you own it or not. And I have been a victim of that. I bought a property, I paid for it 3 times, and I still don't have it. I don't have it. I gave up. But I can imagine that a lot of people go through those same things. And so these are some of the problems that have beset our desire to grow the industry. But that notwithstanding, the fact that there are human beings who need a roof over their heads means that it's important enough, and it's a conditionality under the SDGs as well, that there must be decent housing for people. Now, decent housing means decent infrastructure. Decent infrastructure means a decent economic input into growth. And so they are all interrelated and linked. And I dare say that the government has adopted several forward-looking policy initiatives to create that positive environment that can enhance development in the country. Indeed, I always say that the current government has created the ecosystem in which there is a certain architecture for development and transformation. Why do I say so? It became very obvious that by 2017, the direction of our economy was a bit, it wasn't desirable. And so that something different had to come. And I dare say that over the decades, there's been that thinking that, well, we need to do something different. We need to do something different. We need to do something different because we are not facilitating growth within the economy. But by 2017, there was a tacit agreement that the nature of the economy, where we were only exporting our raw materials and resources, would not in any way engender wealth creation and develop our economy. So the government of the day, led by the new administration, decided that we need to change that trajectory. And now we want to add value to our raw materials and resources before export, such that we get a full appreciation of the value chain at the top end. And then many of the problems that we have, because we'll be exporting much more than we import, many of the problems that we have with our currency will not be there, when the Ghanaian cedi will strengthen. And therefore, we'll build purchasing power within the economy. But that in itself could not happen, isolatedly. So to ensure that we add value to our raw materials, the concept of the one district, one factory policy came in, which is the fundamentals of industrializing our economy, because every nook and cranny of this country, each of the 261 districts would have some manufacturing facility. Now, can you imagine that if that happened, what it would result in? That will stem the rural to urban migration that you see every year. That is putting pressure on our cities. That is putting pressure on young people to roam the streets selling all manner of things. Wherever you are, from Bonkurugu Yoyo to Axim to Nzulezu, to mention it, you would find a job, a better paying job, because you are in industry, in manufacturing. But not only that, you create opportunities in marketing, in haulage, in management and all that. So you can see the country grow. But that in itself also could not happen in isolation, because you need capable, trained people. So government followed up and built up the free senior high school policy, where we expect that in the near term, the near future, the minimum education of the average Ghanaian would be high school education. That is much more constructive in engaging the economy. And we've seen how many other countries in the world have transformed because of education. So we are not left out in that equation. That is another thing that is important for us. So gradually, we're weaving a matrix of factors that will bring about transformation. Additionally, government also went into the agri sector, because agriculture has been our mainstay, and it's estimated that some 50% plus of our population is engaged in agriculture somewhere along the value chain. So that in itself was important enough. And so, of course, to ensure that we had food security, because food security is very important for any country, a new policy was implemented called the Planting for Food and Jobs, and its subsidiary policies, Planting for Rural Development and Export, One Village, One Dam, and all that, to enhance food security. So gradually, that whole ecosystem was being built. But having said that, it became very critical, especially post-pandemic, that we also enhance our health infrastructure. And so government came out with a new initiative called Agenda 111, which is the bid to build medical facilities across the country in 111 places, some in the districts, some in the regional capitals, etc., etc. So gradually we are taking one step forward at a time. But perhaps the most compelling indication or indicator of progress very often is housing and shelter. Because if you just build factories and people don't have homes to live in, I mean, they don't see what's happening. You just build all the roads and still people don't have places to live in. You still find people lying by the streets to sleep. The streets become their homes, and that's not the purpose of a street. So housing is a critical element of it. And under the SDGs, the issue of comfortable, affordable, and convenient shelter is a critical element. And so here we are today. What do we need to do? What have we been doing? And we have quite an interesting array of people here who can tell us some of the things they're doing. We actually have real estate developers here who can tell us what they're doing. But I dare say that if you've not been in Ghana the past 10 years and you suddenly dropped in here, you see a different story. We are seeing properties developing all over the place. And in fact, when you are flying into Ghana, as the MC said, you see and you look out, especially during the daytime, you see a lot of structures not completed. And you see how much people have sunk into trying to get a home. In fact, you see more uncompleted homes than completed homes till you get to Accra. And sometimes, you wonder, wow, if there had been a better structured, industry, people wouldn't have to put their money in cement and blocks and then wait 5 years, then they do up to lintel, wait another 5 years, then they do the roof. By the time he's ready to live in the house, maybe he's even past retirement. And if you're not careful, they only come and have your funeral in the house. And we see that all the time. But I'm happy that we're having this here, because then we can actually bring, bearing to what can be done and is being done. And I dare say once again that almost every person who leaves school, starts to work, dreams of owning a home. And so it's not just a government initiative. It's an initiative that all of us must embrace individually, because our hopes and aspirations of our success in life begin with having a home. I mean, all the young people here, the young men here, I mean, they are threatened. They are afraid to marry because they don't own homes. All the young ladies too are threatened because they say, this man, the man doesn't have a roof over his head. Why should I mind him? So the impact even on our society is significant. And they're all related. And we are happy at GIPC that we can partner once again with the UNDP in this very important endeavor to have this conversation. I don't like to say we have meetings and seminars and workshops. Let's have conversations, because when you have these conversations, you hear a lot of ideas, new ideas. You can exchange ideas. And we don't come here with a view that we know exactly what you should do. We have the conversation so that we can put together all the ideas and formulate a way forward and help with policy. Because as a friend of mine once told me, on a lighter side, he said, yes, I can never make a coffin, but I sure knows how a coffin should be shaped like, because I'll be the one lying in it. You know, and so to hear from you, to hear from those engaged in the industry, to hear from the regulators, to hear from the policymakers is very important for us today. And at GIPC, we are extremely delighted that we can work with UNDP to continue the series in understanding what the SDG roadmaps actually indicate. In the roadmaps, there is also a synthesis of how you can acquire and build homes. And there's a feeling that all homes should be expensive. Not necessarily. Some say affordable housing, but I don't know what that concept entirely means, because every home is affordable depending on the size of your pocket. But what is critical is social homes, which then people who do not have the money to build their dream homes can afford. And I'm sure you're all aware of the global crisis that arose out of the subprime crisis in the US that brought almost a global meltdown, where in the US, companies built homes, banks financed homes, and sold out all these homes, only to wake up one day to realize that the people who bought the homes could not sustain payments on the homes. And they had created pools of funds, sold them as bonds to raise the money to build those homes. So even the bondholders then were at risk. The finance providers were at risk. I think we've all learned from that process. We've gotten to a point where we think we should constructively engage to build an industry that will serve the people and will serve the consumer and bring hope to life. So I think I've spoken much more than I should speak. I said we are here to listen. At GIPC, we bring people together to have a conversation. So I'll yield the podium to my very good friend, who's our usual MC, who indeed, like he said, he has a clear interest in this sector. And every morning when I listen to them rave and rant on radio, it's not because they just want to be critical. It's because they themselves put themselves in this situation and hope to see that something happens. But I can assure him that we are living in times where hope is going to drive us to make things happen. So have a wonderful morning, and let's all engage. I would not want you to just listen. I'd want you to engage. If you have issues, you have questions, please throw them out. We are in this all together, and we'll work out the solutions together. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Mr. Grant.
Numerous incentive packages for investment. We are open and ready for partnerships to grow in Ghana and grow with Ghana. Locate us at Vivo Place Cantonment Accra or call us 0302-665-12529. Online at www.gipc.gov.gh and on all social media platforms at GIPC Ghana. Drop us a mail, info@gipc.gov.gh. GIPC, your first port of call for investing in Ghana.
Thank you. So we are going to move on with the rest of the program. And as I said earlier and Mr. Grant reiterated, this event is being organized by the GIPC and the UNDP. If you followed Ghana's development, you realize that UNDP is a key development partner. If you check their annual report of 2021, they invested over $10 million in various projects. beyond helping us deal with plastic waste, training the media in climate-related matters and the SDGs. They invested in agric and ensured that over 1,000 women were enabled to farm productively. But one other thing that they did that is changing the face of investment is the Sdg Investor Map, which has unearthed or discovered that there's an opportunity for us to collaborate and invest on projects from SMEs to large-scale projects worth over $39 million. We had a conversation on agric using the Sdg Investor Map. Today, we are going to have a conversation also around housing and infrastructure based on the work the UNDP has done. And we have the UNDP Deputy Resident Representative. His name, I'll take it and try to get it right, Mr. Shukrob Kush Mohamedov. Please help me welcome him as he gives his address.
I think my name is basically getting pronounced better and better, I think, as compared to the last time. Also, MC, thank you for reading our report and promoting the annual report. It's really great. I mean, we normally do want to share with everyone our achievements and what we do for Ghana. And I think we will not stop on this. I mean, this year we are even more ambitious than the last year. Is it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This year we are more ambitious than the last year. So more will be coming. I mean, we are not stopping on that. And the last year, by the way, we were much more ambitious than the previous year. So I think we are growing every year. And thank you for reading the report and promoting our report basically to the wider audience. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to join today for this facilitation breakfast meeting, which is focused on housing and infrastructure. Actually, Mr. Yofi Grant, and your name in pronunciation is very easy actually as compared to mine. Thank you. You set a very good stage for us to discuss, and I do agree that the format of these meetings it's quite different from the normal format, and it gives us the opportunity basically to interact and to contribute. You set a very good stage. You put a very good scene for us. And maybe in my speech I will try to put more figures in that scene, and I think that's it's so good that you spoke first, basically. So then, so people started thinking, and then I can put some figures basically on housing and infrastructure into basically the context that you set. Numerous studies, including one conducted by UNDP, have proven that infrastructure growth and services can play a critical role in economic growth and poverty reduction. It also enhances human security, particularly of poor people, by contributing to their security in food, employment, health, communities, and personal as well as environmental security. Today, we are here to look at the emerging investment opportunities in the areas of housing and infrastructure. According to the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure, Ghana has a housing gap of about 85,000 housing units yearly, and this number is on the rise with an average annual population growth of 1.9%. This was pegged at more than 2 million housing unit needs before pandemic hit. I mean, Mr. MC, you were actually right about 2 million, but again, it was before pandemic. So after pandemic with 1.9% growth, it's even higher actually. With this, about 60% of working population would need help accessing housing, and about 35% would not be able to access housing even with the government support through subsidies. Ghana is increasingly looking for ways to close the infrastructure gap. The private sector is seen as a key partner in the attainment of infrastructure development outcomes. The Global Infrastructure Hub estimates that for Ghana to facilitate the attainment of SDGs, annual infrastructure investment will need to reach $9.3 billion by 2030. This is quite a huge amount. Positively, The government is committed to increase investments in the sector and is poised to create an enabling environment to attract private investments for expansion in infrastructure sector. While initiatives such as National Housing and Mortgage Fund and the Year of Roads are commendable, there is still space for investments to build and improve infrastructure across the country. As mentioned earlier, this engagement is to explore the emerging areas that are yet to be tapped or that could be improved on. The SDG Investor Map dives into these specific areas, and we will see shortly some of the investment opportunity areas available in this sector. The first iteration of the maps was launched last year, through which 5 main sectors were identified, and out of which came 12 investment opportunity areas, 4 of which we are discussing today. A second iteration of SDG Investor Map is currently identifying specific investment opportunities at the local levels with 6 metropolitan, municipal and district assemblies. The second iteration also seeks to draw investors into the arts, sports and culture sectors of the Ghanaian economy. At UNDP, we are excited about the results and potential of this work and look forward to reporting on the massive impact of the partnership we have forged with the Ghana Investment Promotion Center. To conclude, I would like to thank all of the project partners for their tireless efforts to make Ghana's SDG Investor Map a reality, especially GIPC, PwC, Business for Peace based in Norway, International Chamber of Commerce, as well as Ministry of Finance for their leadership. I would like to end my remark with an assurance of UNDP's continued support towards making Ghana an investment destination of choice, and our unwavering commitment to support the SDG Investor Map as a vehicle for strategic development investment. Thank you for your time, and I wish us a fruitful discussion in this interesting format, basically. And I do want to encourage you, basically, to contribute into these discussions, because I think we are here to grasp your ideas, basically, and to further develop our vision that we have been developing within this project and with the different studies. Thank you very much.
Center of the world and home to the headquarters of the AFCFTA. Abundant resources and limitless opportunities for business and investment. A great story of growth and attractive returns in a fast transforming country. Be part of this great opportunity and optimism. Invest in Ghana. Make it happen with the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, GIPC. And on all social media platforms at GIPC Ghana. Drop us a mail, info@gipc.gov.gh. GIPC, your first port of call for investing in Ghana.
Affordable and clean energy, SDG number 7. Decent wealth and economic growth, SDG number 8. Responsible consumption and production, SDG number 12. And climate action, SDG number 13. At Alchemy Alternative Energy, these are our guiding principles for business. Alchemy Alternative Energy is a company which was established to deal with the proliferation of waste in the system and also use waste as a form of resource for the benefit of mankind. Here at Alchemy Alternative Energy, our primary raw materials are used ties and plastic sachet bags that are deposited at vantage points that we come from. And we use these raw materials and convert it into residual fuel oil. And the second one we get from it is carbon black. And the third one we get from it is the steel wire from the tie. The residual fuel, companies come here to buy it, to use it for their boilers as a form of heating. Companies like Wahom, Steelworks, and that's what they use in their furnaces to heat up their metals to a certain temperature, so that, and our oil has the highest flash point compared to other used oils that they use in town. The oil is also used in road construction, and they have a proportion of the oil that they use in mixing the bitumen before it is turned into a bitumen. The second product is the carbon black, and it has a lot of use. Even though in Ghana here, a lot of people don't know about its use. One of its uses is that some people use it as an agriculture to enhance the soil, because it prevents water from evaporating, thereby enriching the soil. And in construction too, it is used as a source product in the manufacture of bitumen for the road sector. And secondly, the carbon black is also used in construction in waterlogged areas, whereby it is used in the manufacture of bricks to prevent salt coming through the water. It has been tried and tested. And thirdly, with the wire mesh, the steel wire is used as door springs for trapdoors and also used as binding wire in the construction industry. Alkaline Alternative Energy is situated in Pram behind Ghana Stocker Center of Excellence, and we started production in 2014. In 2014, we had a staff capacity of 5, and currently we have a staff capacity of 15. We have 3 main client bases in agriculture, construction, and manufacturing. In the next 5 years, Alkaline Alternative Energy hopes to increase our productions from the current 2,000 tons per year to 5,000 tons. By increasing our capacity, it will mean we'll be able to employ up to 50 workers, thereby reducing youth unemployment. To achieve this, the company will need investment in finance and technical support. Alchemy is all about alternative energy in Ghana. Let's grow in Ghana and grow with Ghana.
Indeed, let's grow in Ghana, let's grow with Ghana, and that's a very touching video of a business that is making sure we rid our environment of waste that causes us all sorts of problems. And these businesses are supported by the UNDP, they are supported by the GIPC, and I think that those of us here must also support them. Kojo Saka, maybe your next investment, you may need to look at Alchemy, so that they provide some of the building materials you need to build your homes. Kojo agrees. Please put your hands together for him. You know, in our circles, he's called the Kou Elon Musk. Yeah. He just looks at you and says, Kojo, let me buy your house and build 3 more units and dash you 1. He invests in the housing space to create opportunities for all of us, and it's good to see him here. Now, we've heard from Mr. Grant, we've heard from Mr. Kush Muhammadov. So we are going to see the presentations on what the opportunities are, what the future holds, and what we can all do. And to start us off with the presentations, we'll have Sylvia Sefako Senu. She's a UNDP economic analyst. She's going to speak on the investor maps and the participation and utilization of the maps to create opportunities for all of us. Please welcome Sylvia to the stage as she gets ready to present.
Good morning. Okay, so I'll make a little presentation on the investor map as we have it. Okay, so a lot of the background information has been given, but it is quite clear that since about 2007, Ghana has invested hugely, about 23 billion in infrastructure development. And this is actually stated by the Global Infrastructure Hub. Also, you can see clearly that there are gaps. So in order to close the gaps, the participation of stakeholders, especially foreign direct investment, is very important to drive, and close some of these gaps. It is also said that to attain the SDGs, there must be an annual investment of about 9.3 billion, by 2030. And Ghana's own, thank you, and Ghana's own infrastructure plan, which is looking at, building a world-class resilient infrastructure asset to support Ghana's development growth and then to improve the quality of life, is targeting to achieve all these big dreams by the year 2047. So what it means actually is that for us to attain the plans or the objectives that is set out by the Ghana Investment Plan, we need to invest about 96 billion by the year 2040, and that is no small, resource to invest in the sector. So this will take me to the point about the SDG Investor Map and what the kind of tools that UNDP is promoting. So, yeah. So UNDP is promoting SDG impact because, of course, we are champions of the Sustainable Development Goals. And as part of the initiative, and of course, because of the ambitious nature of the SDGs and the fact that we understand that this must be attained by all, including the active participation of the private sector. And so in this case, it means that gone are the days where development is left to government and other stakeholders. Here we are thinking aligning SDGs with private investments so that we can achieve the best out of it. So there are tools that we are promoting in terms of impact management. That is by way of integrating impact with measured investment strategies. And also we are pushing the whole agenda of impact intelligence, which really is focused on the investor maps. So with the impact intelligence, we are looking at iterating local investment opportunity areas in a well-planned framework that actually bridges the gap between investors and investment, because studies have shown us that investors actually sometimes do not really know the information available or where the opportunities lay. And to actually kickstart that whole process of finding out information and then about the sector and doing the initial, assaying, if you like, of the investment opportunity areas, it costs them some time. It costs them a lot of sometimes going through the bureaucratic situations in countries. So this is the tool that we are using to bridge the gap. So the investor maps provides policy priorities, it provides development needs, and it also provides investment potentials. Sorry, give me a moment, please. Yeah. So that is really the added advantage of the investor map. It brings private sector players, global and local investors, government and other stakeholders at the country level to facilitate matchmaking and to improve enabling environment. Because as we are having a discussion, you realize that key issues pertaining all the sectors that have been iterated are going to come on board for discussion, and we have key stakeholders playing a part in these sectors here, to influence their direction and the like. So in terms of the question of how do we arrive at the maps, okay. I'm speaking without, sorry. So in terms of the question of how we arrive at the maps are attained through an 8 steps methodology. And first of all, we collect the information on national development needs and policy priorities. We go through a lot of the national documents, including the medium-term development frameworks, including the plans, for instance, on infrastructure and the like, to determine what the national development priorities and needs are. Then we synthesize these policies into a set of national sectors through national stakeholders dialogues and conversations. And then eventually we come up with these, investment opportunity areas and then the agreed sectors. So this panel just kind of tries to iterate or show how the distilling of the information is done. So you can see how we go through the various levels, as I've mentioned, the 8-step strategy to first of all collect the local information, meet stakeholders around it. We now prioritize the sectors, prioritize the subsectors, and then the regions. So the investment or the SDG Investor Map has a number of information, quite rich, that any investor who is interested in investing in Ghana would appreciate. First of all, it has data on sectors, on location where the opportunities lay. It has details of the pipeline, or if you like, the opportunity area itself. And it also makes the business case. And this is an initial arrangement done just to show that there's value in investing in the sector. And it also gives you an enabling environment, introduction or detailed research that has been done in terms of who are the players in the sector, what do you need to look out for, and what priorities are being set by government in the area. So, as has been said already, the first iteration of the Investor Map was launched last year, and it had 5 sectors that was iterated with about 12 investment opportunity areas. So we have agriculture, we have infrastructure, we have manufacturing, we have health, and then we have ICT. So these are the opportunities that were highlighted. So for infrastructure, there are 4. Okay. So for infrastructure, there are 4 investment opportunity areas that are highlighted. These are in the sense of affordable housing, road construction and maintenance, collection and recycling of electronic waste, and then sanitation services for unserved areas. So let's look at some of the information that are available for the investment opportunity areas that are highlighted under infrastructure. Okay. So the first opportunity which we're looking at is affordable housing. And here it's talking about scaling up investments in affordable housing for low and middle income households in suburban areas through blended finance with private sectors, patient capital, grants, basically to look at investments for lease or for rent to own. And if you go online, which I'm going to introduce you to very shortly on the link or the investment platform, you'll find a bit more detailed explanation of what this is about. It gives you all the data points I've already spoken about, but in summary, here it's talking about the big cities. The fact that we have so many people in Accra, in Kumasi, in the northern regions, and in all these emerging cities, you have slums coming up, and this has already been said on this platform. So around 50%, as at the time that the map was iterated, around 50% of households occupy single rooms. And then further, some 27 occupy 2 rooms. And we know that averagely we have about 4 people living in a household. What it means is that there's congestion in the households, and this has a potential for increasing the spread of diseases, but also puts women especially in some discomfort. So that is why this is really a priority in terms of achieving the SDGs. So for this investment opportunity area, we are looking at removing or decreasing inequalities in accessing housing. And then we want to increase, we want to reduce the growth of slum areas as part of the whole package of, pushing the highway. So the stakeholders who are going to be impacted by this are low and middle income owners, and it has been said, you work but you can still afford a home. So how can we use reusable materials? And some of the challenges around the sectors are really because of the high cost of the construction materials that we use in building our houses or putting up the structures that we use. Meanwhile, this is a priority for government. Government has financial incentives and programs that is looking at helping investors in the area to go into the area. So you have, even for companies who are offering approved affordable housing, getting 1% CIT instead of 25 for the first year. This is really an incentive that can be taken advantage of by investors. What is the market size? An estimated housing deficit of more than 1.7 billion units means a huge market, for investors who are interested in the area. But of course, the challenges around them, we know, are because of the high cost. And so aiming at building households that are, or houses that are more affordable with innovative partnerships is what we are looking at pushing for this IOA. The indicative return for the IOA is about 20% to 25%, depending on the size of the project. And the time frame of the investment is medium term, which we are looking at about 10 years. So if you're able to invest some resources here, this is what you can expect to get, some about 25%. And there are a number of actors in the sector. So we have the World Bank, the UNOPS, we have the National Housing and Mortgage Fund, and we have interesting private sector businesses who are also playing the field. We have Deftraco, Trazaco, we have Reggie Manuels, we have Clifton Homes, we have Saka Homes, all playing in the sectors. And for the public sector, you look no further but to the Ministry of Works and Housing. The director is here today with us and is going to be talking a bit more about their work. Okay. The next IOA, the investment opportunity area that we are looking at, is in engineering and construction services. And here it's road construction and maintenance. We know government has announced the year of roads. Why? Mainly because there are serious also gaps in the kind of quality of roads that we have. The business model we are looking at is to invest in construction and maintenance of road transportation, infrastructure such as roads, tunnels, bridges, through PPP scheme, such as concessions. And I want to say that we all know what roads can do and opening up of the economy and spaces. And so even in here are opportunities in the rail sector, because government has also prioritized that. And the opportunity lies countrywide, in Ashanti region, in Eastern, in the Northeast, in the Northern, and then in the Savannah. And I can even say that before these maps were done, the road in Tamale wasn't even constructed. So it clearly identified the opportunity in there for businesses who, or private interest, basically. And talking about the development need, in 2016, Ghana had less than 80,000 kilometers of roads. Of these roads, about 41% were reported to be in good condition, and only 33% were in fair condition. That was in 2016. Of course, there's been an increase. There's an interest. Government has given different agendas in terms of the year of roads and in terms of different projects that I'm sure the ministry will be talking about. What are we looking at? We want to reduce transportation time and cost. Is it me? Is it me? Okay. Sorry. So we want to reduce transportation time and cost. We want to improve connectivity for farmers, to the market, to logistics companies, and to services. And roads are also very important for assessing health. So these are some of the things we are looking at in terms of aligning the construction of roads with the social services that needs to be provided. The stakeholders impacted are definitely Ghanaian population in general, the farmers, as I've said, agri-owners, MSMEs, logistic companies, and the like. Market size. So for an estimated 1 billion is being looked at as in the size of this market. So if you are interested to know, you see about 74% of roads as at 2018 were unpaved. So if you want to pave that, or if you want to take that as a business interest, then you have that to even run with. And the indicative return profile is looking at some 25 to 35%, depending once again on the size of the project that you'd be having. What is the time frame? Road construction, of course, depending on the size, can turn around maybe in the medium term, but what we know is that this is a long-term construction, to medium term, as I've said, and the time frame usually depends on the length of the road and then the scope of the work. This can last between 10 years or more. A number of sector players are here. A number of sector players are here. We have the European Development Fund, AFDB, we have World Bank, we have Oswald Investment Limited, we have the Ministry of Roads and Highways, as I've been said again, and then we have the Ghana Highways Authority. And the interesting thing is that the investor map always presents detailed information in terms of the links of documents and the case studies that you can get or read for further information, all at a spot. The next opportunity is recycling of electronic waste. And I was quite glad that the video that preceded this presentation was on repurposing and reuse of car tires. So we want to establish and operate recycling plants for e-waste repurposing. That is the whole idea. There's a huge, e-waste and recycling in Ghana is mostly, very informal. And so there's an opportunity to formalize the sector and go in with, sinking some good investments, because currently what we know is that the waste is collected by small-scale collectors, households that offer the waste for cash. And then meanwhile, we generate over 129,000 tons of e-waste annually. So you ask yourself, what are we doing with all this waste? It is a hazard for the environment, but it's also an opportunity at the same time for investment if interest is prioritized, if interest is put in and prioritized. The development outcome for this IOA is to reduce environmental impact of e-waste and foster a circular economy for electronic products. Because if we repurpose, we can reuse for some of the things that we can create, helping us even go into the production of electronics. So stakeholders impacted are urban population, living in formal and informal settlements. And then we have lower income communities benefiting from new job opportunities. If we formalize this sector, we can properly hire people to go into the collection of waste for repurposing. Okay. And then in terms of enabling environment, there exist several policy documents promoting investment in e-waste management and recycling in the country, including Ghana's own medium-term development framework, including our national climate change policy, which is supported by UNDP, by the way. Also, the market size is USD 1 billion. We are looking at activities that will generate between 105 million to about 268 million every year. So it's a big market that can be ventured into. The benchmark IRR for waste management is estimated between 12 to 18%. And for this particular study, we established that the benchmark could be, the IRR could be about 15 to 20%. A number of players are in there as well. And then the time frame of this investment is medium term. A number of players are there. We have AFDB, we have UNIDO, we have Global Alliance for Health, and then Health and Population and Pollution, and then we have some private sector businesses in there as well. For further information, we can actually see. Okay, so that was for recycling, and now the final, not least, is for sanitation. It's for sanitation. What is the model we are looking at? Here we want to invest in water utilities and services by upscaling sanitation services to the unserved areas, which is very, very important. If you look at it, Ghana is but moderately achieving the goals on sanitation, on WASH. So this is an area that we need to take seriously if we want to achieve the SDGs, because we have people defecating openly. We have people without toilets, facilities, and it's really a major concern for the environment, not only, but also for the health of the people in there. So the business model is affordable sanitation services and wash stations. I mean, these are for, public easing, let me put it that way. The opportunities lies in Volta, Northern, Upper East, and then Upper West, because there are huge gaps in wash in these areas. So what's the development need? About 53% of households have no access to hand washing facilities. But for COVID, this is pre-COVID study, but of course COVID brought to the light that we need to, promote hand washing in our homes and everywhere. So probably if the study is done this time around, then this is going to change, but this is pre-COVID, and that was the figure that was established, And then some 21% practice open defecation, and some 34% has no access to improved sanitation. So if you take 3 people, one person will tell you, I don't have access to, improve sanitation, and this is worrying. So we want to invite investors and interested people into the area to invest, of course. And then the market size is quite big, depending on the investment that is also put in, but also because of the approach of the model that is being presented. You are looking at probably for pay and the like. So here we want to say that World Bank, for instance, approved 125 million for some 500 thousand people projects, and that was quite huge. So you can see that even the development partners are interested in this, and so if we can be creative and innovative about the partnership that we form around investing in these areas, because UNICEF is a big champion of WASH, and their investments that they promote in the area. So if you're an investor and you want to go into the sector, you can talk to some of these partners in the area. The medium term is the investment time frame is medium term, and then, like I said, the investors interested in the, you have UN Habitat interested in this area, you have UNICEF, you have EU, you have the World Bank. And then when it comes to the public sector, you have the National Sanitation Authority and the like playing the field. So this brings to a summary what the investment opportunity areas in the infrastructure sector looks like. But to also say that we do this with the objective of bringing together stakeholders to ponder over the issue, to galvanize support, and to generate interest in the areas. We are doing a second iteration, and this time is on art, culture, and then sport. This is an area that we believe strongly that we have to channel investments there so that we can take advantage of the budding economy of art and culture and then sports. So I invite you to go on the SDG Investment Platform, which is online. It is online and it is accessible to all at no charge. All the information regarding agri, regarding manufacturing, regarding ICT, regarding education and health are all there for you to use. But the interesting thing is that when you are registering, you have the opportunity of making your details public, which means that other people who are interested in the same area as you can see you, contact you, and then you can take it forward in terms of discussions, partnerships, and the like. So please visit https SDGs Investor Platform.undp.org for further information. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Sylvia. That was a very detailed presentation, taking us through all the various opportunities. I think she needs another round of applause. And as she presented, I was seeing different levels of investment. If you cannot build high-rise buildings, you can go into sanitation and build improved public toilets, which would require, say, 100, 200, 300,000 cities. So there are different levels of investment for all of us. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when you were registering, there was a QR code that you scanned. The QR code comes with a link for you to be able to attach, download company profiles. Now, these companies are companies here that want to interact with you. So if there's any company on the catalog you want to talk to, we have forms on your tables. So write your name, the name of the company you want to talk to, and GIPC will facilitate for you to get to meet and talk. So that beyond the conversations here, we also have meaningful partnerships that will drive the investment we are looking for. Now, at this point, we are going to hear from the Ministry of Finance. Yes, you see, in Chi, you see, you have to believe it because they are holding something. When the blind person says they'll throw a stone at you, you have to believe because they are probably holding something. Over the past 2 years, COVID, near recession because of COVID, and the global issues have prompted the government to launch what we call the Batampa program. That's the Ghana Cares program. The Ghana COVID Alleviation and Revitalization of Enterprises Support. A lot of people have asked, how are we going to get 100 billion Ghana cedis to drive the economy and move the economy forward? Today we have 2 reps from the Ministry of Finance. They are going to share with us what the Ghana Cares program is, what the opportunities are, especially for housing and infrastructure, and how together we can drive that 100 billion Ghana cedi vision. So to do the presentation, there are 2 people, and I would invite the first person to come, and the other will follow. So we have GIPC-UNDP, she's a principal economist at the Ministry of Finance. She'll be joined by Mr. Dela Zumanu, CEO of the National Housing Ownership Fund, to tell us what the Ghana Cares program is, what opportunities in there are for all of us, and how together we can drive growth. Please, GIPC-UNDP.
Thank you very much. I'm doing this presentation on behalf of Ms. Eva Mens, the Coordinating Director and also the Program Coordinator for the Ghana Cares. I think in Mr. Iofi's grant remarks, he partially presented the Ghana Cares. So I'm just going to be very brief, then I'll hand over to Dela, who is the CEO of the National Home Fund, to tell us what we are doing to bridge that deficit, that gap in the housing industry. So what is Ghana Cares? During the COVID, even though the COVID pandemic had brought in the negative impacts, or we had negative impacts from the pandemic, it also presented opportunities. So government realized the opportunities that the pandemic brought and decided to harness on those opportunities and invest in some strategic sectors of the economy, focusing on the real sector. So COVID is government's strategic intervention to revitalize and transform, or the Ghana Cares is government strategic intervention to revitalize and transform the economy post-COVID. It also seeks to boost the productive capacity of the economy, especially for high import goods. The program sought to stabilize the economy during the pandemic and afterwards transform and revitalize the economy for a better Ghana. In doing that, government is seeking to make investments in strategic, as I already mentioned, strategic investments in the real sector of the economy. We are looking at the agricultural sector, we are looking at the tourism sector, we are also looking at the, is it better now? Thank you. We are also looking at trade, and of course we also looked at the housing and construction sector. So for the agricultural sector, we are seeking to support value chain actors and more predominantly attract the youth into commercial agric, and not just any youth, but educated youth, so that they can take over the aging farmers. So in attracting educated youth into commercial farming, we are focusing on 4 commodities, that is tomatoes, rice, maize, poultry, and soya. These commodities, because data show that these are high import commodities. For instance, for rice, annually we spend about $400 million to import rice into the country. So we sought to support these young entrepreneurs to venture into commercial farming and increase productivity, that we can increase production, that we can even export, and also for consumption at home. We're also looking at the light manufacturing sector with focus on the pharmaceuticals, the textiles, and garment industry. For instance, during COVID, we saw that some of the pharmaceutical companies even veered into manufacturing of hand sanitizers and liquid soaps. We are trying to help them upgrade to international standards, WHO international standards, such that some of these pharmaceutical companies can't even start producing vaccines in Ghana. It's being done, but on a smaller scale, but we want to expand that with the help of the Ghana Cares. We are also looking at the digital economy, because with the pandemic, almost all of us were at home for 2 years. Everything was E. Some were even e-signing. Everything, meetings were virtually. So we are also trying to see how we can support entrepreneurs in that field to expand the digital economy. And of course, the housing and construction sector too, how we can build the capacity of local contractors to create jobs and also take up more of our contracts. How are we going to achieve this, or how are we going to achieve this, or what will propel us to get there? For instance, we are looking at reforming the energy sector, because that's a huge one. Trying to reform the energy sector such that they will be able to provide reliable, and not just reliable, but affordable electricity for businesses and the country as in general. And also strengthen some of these banks or institutions such as venture capital, Exim, GESAL, and with the development and the setting up of the development bank, so that they can provide catalytic funding to businesses or entrepreneurs. I'm not going through everything because my colleague would take over. Financing, how are we financing CARES? It's a 100 billion program, but then majority of it is going to come from the private sector. So 70 billion or 70% of this amount is going to come from investment. And I'm happy to say that GIPC is our partner in this regard. They are leading this goal. So it means investment, investment, investment. So to conclude, this is a brief summary. You can see us, we have a website, ghanacares.gov.gh. You have all the details there. But to conclude, this is to zero in and dovetail into what my colleague will be presenting. CARES, what is the underlying philosophy for CARES? It's about job creation. Job creation in all the strategic sectors that we are looking at, in agric, in technology, in ICT, and of course in the construction and housing industry. For instance, we want to leverage on the Agenda 111 program to build the capacities of the local contractors such that they will be able, for instance, if they are constructing a road or you are building estate, that means job for the masons, for the plumbers, for the electricians, and the food vendors, that's the caterers as well. So that means creating jobs for the youth in the economy. So basically, that is it. Recent statistics from the Ghana Statistical Service and data from the Ghana Statistical Service shows that the economy is rebounding after the COVID impact or effect. Provisional results data says that GDP growth for 2021 was 5.4% against the target 4.4. That means we are rebounding. So it means that opportunities exist for investors to invest. So all these interventions is to enable us expand the local economy to create jobs for our female youth. So that is Ghana Cares in a brief. Thank you very much. I'll invite my colleague Della.
Okay, so thank you very much, Gifty, for giving us the background to today's discussion. We at the National Home Ownership Fund, we are a demand-side institution in the housing sector. And I'll explain in a bit what we mean by we are in the demand side, because since independence, we have always thought that the solution to our housing problem is in the supply side. So every government is tried building houses all over and all over. But in 2018, when we started this project, it became obvious to us after we had done some studies that the solution is really not a supply solution, it's actually a demand solution. And I'll explain why that is the case. Today, if I made an announcement here that I work with 10 banks and each has got $10 million waiting to underwrite mortgages, I would not need to finance construction. The private sector will rush into the building sector and they will build houses to uptake those $10 million or $100 million that's available to underwrite mortgages. What that does is that we recycle that money because that private developer who is able to build and he gets his houses sold because there's already money to buy them will keep building, and then the deficit becomes history. And having understood what that is, okay, you actually are projecting, so let me just quickly rush to that point. Okay, so that was our understanding of what the solution should be. We have piloted it, and I'll share with you some of the results from the pilot for you to understand that we have found a way that is creating opportunities in the housing sector. And I'm happy my brother from the Works and Housing is here. They will share with you the collaborations we've had with them and the results and why we believe that there are huge opportunities in that sector for those of you who are interested in that sector to take advantage of. I would also want to share some statistics with you. With these statistics, you will begin to see the opportunities as well. Now, when you interrogate the SNID income data, it tells you that over 80% of the working class, so if you are here and you pay tier 1, you are part of this statistic. What it says is that about 80% earn less than 2,500 cedis a month. That is not including the ones you don't declare. It's just the ones that you pay your tier 1 on. So about 80%. Then another 15% will earn between 2,500 and 5,000. And the last group would earn above 5,000. Now, what this tells us is a story of how affordability of homes looks like. And indeed, when you project to the other side of the screen, you will see that I think somewhere 2-3 years ago, Ministry of Works and Housing undertook some research, and they found something very interesting that actually corroborates what the SNID data is saying. Meanwhile, this data, the SNID data is newer as compared to what, because it's 2020, and that's about 2018, I think, or even 2015 thereabout. But it says that 5% of the population can comfortably afford a home on their own without needing any help or any support. Then another 35% will need some government intervention or support. So it's like what we are doing now is trying to bring down the cost of a house so that the ordinary Ghanaian can afford it. And then a huge number of 60% will not be able to afford the house no matter how much support we give them. Therefore, we have to give them a social house, which is literally free. And so that tells you the picture of the situation that we have found ourselves in as a country. Our salaries will very much define the kind of houses that we can own. And there are ways around it because, like my other colleagues have said, there are different levels of housing. And like Mr. Yofi said, he doesn't believe in the thing about affordability because depending on your level, it could be affordable to you and not affordable to me. But there are other things we learned and found out, that if we create opportunities where people can have long tenures, and I'll show you an example. If myself and another person earn the same salary, have the same level, we are on the same, everything the same, but I give him 5 years to pay for the same house of the same price, and I give myself 15 years, it's very obvious that for me who is doing 15 years, I will find that house a lot more affordable than the guy who is doing 5 years or even 10 years. So the game changer here is not just about the salary of the house, it's also about the tenure that I have to pay off that house. I totally agree that it may be a lot more expensive to you because you have a longer tenure. Why not? Somebody is putting his money longer with you, you must pay more. But the end benefit is a house. And so if that gives you a house, then those are very important discussions to have. And so at the demand side of the solution, these were things we sat down and said, look, if we want to
deal with affordability or deal with people getting homes, there are more smaller things that we need to look at, just looking at the cost of the house. Somebody told me, and I think it's true, that even location adds up to the price of a house. Location has become a factor for affordability. Because if I rent a house in Kaswa and I rent a house in Osu, I literally won't pay the same rent. But if I consider the cost of travel and the energies I put in, the productivity that is lost in traffic for 3 hours in and out, I am better off buying a house or renting a house in Osu than doing that in Kaswa. Many of us haven't done this math, so we take the easier way out. But we have done the research at the National Homeownership Fund, and we have found out that there are ways by which we can bridge this gap if we look at the things that we do not normally take notice of. And I'll share something else with you. Now, I kept saying that the solution is more demand than supply. But this is where we are. These are things we all know. These are the challenges for which reason you and I have not been able to achieve that level of getting our own home in our own comfort zones. This is a problem. But the key of this problem is about communication between the demand side and the supply side. You know, if I am at the demand side where I have the money to buy a house, and you build a house for me that my resources cannot afford, you may have provided a house, but it does not meet my need. And therefore, demand and supply not speaking to each other creates a lot more problem for ownership. Look, we did a project which I'll share with you. In our minds, we thought that one-bedroom homes, because they'll be cheaper, will be more liked by the ordinary Ghanaian. Let me tell you what, we were rudely shocked. When we built more one-bedroom homes, took people there and they were not interested. Yeah. He's buying a house for 20 years, sinking his half of his working life in it. Why should he buy a one-bedroom house if he could get a 2 or even a 3? And the beauty of it is that the younger, job guys who have entered a job younger even wanted 3-bedroom homes. He's thinking into the future.
When the demand does not speak to supply, we may be supplying some homes which may not be meeting the needs and the demands of others. You know, we all thought that people would buy houses so that they live in it and come to work. We were shocked also to realize that people were even thinking about retirement places than where they will live and come to work. So if I'm struggling to find a place in Osu or somewhere within the city to build a home, probably 10% of the people I'm targeting actually want a retirement home somewhere in their village or somewhere, outside the outskirts of Accra, because they don't want to retire and be living in the traffic if they have to go to the hospital and all that. So it was very revealing for us at the National Homeownership Fund when we took a little survey, did a little research to understand what really underlies the issues of affordability, and therefore we could understand how to tailor solutions to meet these needs. And I'll share with you. So these are things we know, our mandate, this is our model. But I want to share with you what we found out when we did a project in Community 22 with GCB Bank and TDC Development Company. So we have done all the research, we have found all the things we needed to find, and we did not think that putting it on paper was enough. Because we believe also that sometimes when you hit the ground, you find things that are different from what you have found during the research. So we got our hands dirty, we hit the ground, and we built in 9 months 204 homes that were affordable. Now, there's something I didn't tell you, and I'll tell you now. When markets fail, governments need to intervene. It's a basic economic philosophy or economic policy. And like I said, in 2018, it was obvious to us that our housing market had failed because it was not just responding to the basic, indicators that shows a thriving market. So the market had failed. And in order to bring that market back, government needed to incentivize the private sector to get interested and excited again. And Mr. Adokufo is here. We did this work with him, and I must commend him for all the experience he brought to the table. And typically, it was obvious that there were only 2 or 3 banks that were doing mortgages, and they were doing not more than 7 years in terms of tenure.
And I've given you why tenure is important. So if the banks were doing just as much as 7 years tenure, then we're not going to meet affordability using that principle I shared with you. And secondly, they were not putting investment in there because they didn't have long-term capital. They were using your deposits that were 3 months, 6 months to do a 7-year investment. It was just a mismatch. And the issues of high rates of mortgages, you were paying for a 7-year mortgage as if you were paying for a 1-year loan. And so it just did not match. On the construction side, let me tell you something very interesting that we also found out. If I went for a loan to build a house for you, and I even had it at 20%, and I built that house and I made a margin of 20% and even charged you for that 20% interest on the loan, that house, I am assuming, and Saka is here, I'm assuming that it will not be sold until after 2-3 years. It will still be sitting on my plate for obvious reasons. And what that means is that I have to put in 60% interest on that loan, because as much as that house is not sold, I still owe that bank every year on, and that interest keeps going. So the guy charges you 60% on a house that should be going for at least 20% if it was taken over in a year. What did we intend to do with that? We work with the developers, give them some construction finance so that they don't charge you 60% on a house that they should be charging you 20%. We worked with them and the banks to get to a point where we're charging 15% instead of 24% that they have to pay when they took loans. Now, the marketing was not going to be Saka's problem anymore, because the structure was such that the banks who were advancing this to you were already having people waiting to take these houses. Therefore, you, the developer, when you were done building, you handed over the house to the bank who had you and I waiting to take them. And therefore, a lot of the things that would naturally have brought cost onto that house had been reduced or had been curtailed. And therefore, these houses gradually were getting shrinked in their cost, and then people were happy to have these houses at a cost that were manageable. So we piloted it at 22. It was not an easy project amidst COVID and all that, but we did it in 9 months, and it was inaugurated. And working with TDC and GCB Bank, we got it mortgaged. And I'm happy to share, even though it's a very small success in terms of the numbers, it gives us an idea of what is possible and what we can do. Now, Mr. Yofi talked about using local materials. Yes, Ghana is not Accra. So in our scaling up, we have moved away and we are looking at places outside, Accra into the regions. We are working with private sector investors who are willing. Now, they are willing not to go to government for guarantees. They are willing to go to the banks for offtake, because they feel more confident now that there's a certain market that works. There's a certain situation that can create a value for them. Therefore, the private developer who has his millions from wherever is willing to work as a private individual, work with our price points and our design and standards that we work with Works and Housing to establish. And government, through the Ghana Cares and other agencies, is supporting us to be able to take off some of the load. Now, you want to know how it became affordable? We took part of the infrastructure cost. Government said, look, we need to incentivize this market for it to work. And government was very committed to take as much as 50% of the infrastructure cost. Let me tell you the infrastructure that is out there. The roads are all tarred. The drains are all covered. There's electricity, there's water. And you walk in there and you feel like this. So you know how people call it? Affordable Trasaku. That's how some call it. And it went to ordinary civil servants, those who work in the ministries, government agencies, and they are paying on a monthly basis and they are comfortable. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have time on our end, so I won't want to take any much more of your time. All I want to say is that we have piloted something that has worked. We have been in consultation with the banks, because the objective for us as a fund is to say that we cannot achieve this outside the banking or the financial sector. So what government is doing through the National Home Ownership Fund is to partner with banks so that we can deliver this product cheap, properly done, and also to the people who rightly need it. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, sir. I don't know if I should ask you the question now or later. There was a resounding question, how much? Okay.
So the one bedrooms that you wouldn't buy went for 170,000 cedis. Affordable, yes. And the 2 bedrooms expandable to 3, that is detached, went for 210,000 cedis. And I believe, looking at what we have, that is indeed affordable. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A round of applause for him. It's exciting, eh? 210,000, 107. But then I'm looking at the income slide in my head, and I'm looking at the levels. And the National Housing Policy says affordable housing is housing that a household spends not more than 30% of their income on. And it includes the rent and the utilities. So if I'm buying for 210, looking at the income slide that you put there, is it affordable for most Ghanaians, even though it's way better than what's on the market? I think we can still do better and drop prices further. That's what I think. We are going to have the next presentation, and this presentation is by KPMG. But Mr. Grant and UNDP, if you'd allow me, maybe our future conversations, when we are talking about housing and infrastructure, we need to add irrigation infrastructure to it. And I have a point to make. When people move from the north to the south, they are coming for a better life. If we are thinking of housing for the people in the north and the people in the rural areas, agric is the main thing. As much as we try to make every Ghanaian have access to electricity, and we boast that we have 80,000 kilometers of roads, 84% electricity access, what percentage of the average Ghanaian who is in agric has an opportunity to continuously produce, to earn that income to buy your house? And I think irrigation infrastructure should be added to basic social infrastructure so that we can create a better, viable economy that has value to support industry. So, Mr. Grant, thank you for the opportunity for me to make this case. Adam Akuma Swache. Adam Akuma Swache. So, at the moment, you are going to have the next presentation, and this institution, they do so much, but the average Ghanaian knows them for VGMAs. Because before the final awards are delivered, Iyola Ayoade will say, now let's call KPMG to bring the rewards. And they'll wear their nice suits and walk up the stage and hand the brown envelope. And we all know that the awards are behind the scenes, but they give them an envelope to show us that these are the awards. They've been excellent in helping shape industry, in helping shape development, and they are here to also participate in this conversation. So, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome the managing partner, KPMG Risk Consulting, Mr. Kwame Barnier, to present on Ghana's infrastructure needs in the face of the industrialization plan. KPMG, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning to you all, and thank you, Kojo, for the introduction. I'm not here to present any awards. I'm here to hopefully share my thoughts on some of the just looking at the title of the discussion, is really about infrastructure, which is for me foundational to housing, right? And my quest is to try to bring the consultant's view or some more practical view to this discussion, because it's very complicated. If you look at all the stakeholders, Ministry of Finance have given a brilliant presentation, UNDP doing fantastic in terms of the lens with which we should look at the world from the 17 goals. You have some builders here, and we've heard Kojo's own opinion about irrigation and other things. So for me, I think it's really to crystallize and bring together some of these things to make it more practical so that we can all have some key takeaways from our perspective. I mean, my first point really is to really understand the facts on the ground from at least our independent perspective. And one is clearly that if you look at the sub-Saharan Africa, just from 2012, which is not too long ago, that's probably when I moved back to Ghana, FDI has gone down significantly. So yes, the UNDP comforted us that they'll do more, but it's glaring that now there's a huge drop. That's clear. The second part is that private sector could do a lot more. There's a huge burden on public sector to intervene with the things that matter to the country. And I think forums like this, kudos to GIPC, to really bring awareness and hopefully participation from every single person here in terms of what we can do, the little we can do to support our country and Africa as a whole. I think for me, just to put out a few points, Ghana is a good place to be, comparatively. Against global standards in Africa, in Europe, Ghana is a great place to be. Yes, the last 2 months hasn't been easy, but I think I was telling a friend this morning that, I mean, for the first time in my life, when I buy fufu, I actually say to myself, hey, Kwame, you have to be careful where you go with your car because I'm not sure how you're going to afford this refueling all the time. But maybe I need to buy a smaller car, right? Okay. So infrastructure is something that's expensive and typically long-term, but deeply required for our development. I think Ghana's infrastructure, a lot has been said about it. I mean, I'll try to summarize it in the lens of the sustainable goals. I really like it. I mean, we worked on this financial roadmap, and a lot of insights came through. So I'll share some of those thoughts with you. I don't think I need to tell you about why we need infrastructure, but just to simplify it in a bit of context, I think if you look at transportation, if you have good, efficient transportation, it impacts agric, it impacts your cost of bringing, let's say, cement. It impacts so much that goes into the primary discussion today of housing. This morning, the radio presenters, Kojo's people were making noise about people stealing electricity and all those things. Power is very, very important. An efficient power, the right power, not just power. With COVID, and I think the global emergence, we've seen that telecommunication is huge. There are people recruiting people here in Ghana who are asking them not to move, just sit here and work. And if you don't have this infrastructure, how is that going to happen? I think irrigation, that's water supply. Kojo spoke about that. Now, as I said, we worked on this sustainable development goals in terms of creating the first financing roadmap for Ghana. And in that process, it was truly revealing the gaps that existed. I think this number, you've seen it. This, go to there's a number which is 9.3 billion. For us to achieve the SDG goals, which is only 10 years away, or actually less than 10 years away, we need about 9.3 billion for infrastructure. Anybody guess how much we get now? %95 of whatever we get is coming from government. 5% from people like Saka and others who don't want to give too much. But it's woefully inadequate. In terms of what we need, and as I said, the topic is truly, I mean, I like to pay attention to details in terms of topics. I mean, you speak about identifying opportunities and enhancing local participation in housing. But housing can really thrive if infrastructure is solid. And we must have that discussion separate. Housing can be seen as infrastructure, but you really need some core fundamental base to move your housing process. I think the representation just before me really alluded to that and explained how certain cost was covered in a grand scale to bring down the cost. And that's why location is important, because in certain areas, the roads are already paved. The four key needs, I think, are water and sanitation, which I think is clear. Telecommunication, I think I've pointed that out. Transportation. Again, I'm speaking a lot about the 17, and my slides are not moving, so I don't know why, but it's okay, we don't need slides. I think it's about getting the point across. The 17 goals is just a way or a logical framework to help us think through how globally we can develop and do things better in a more sustainable manner. So everything we all do sits in one of these buckets. But it's just to help all of us come together in a coordinated manner and achieve things more effectively. And that's why these go. So I think the UNDP has done a fantastic job. I spoke about the 9.3 billion annually that we need. But what is even frightening is that for Ghana as a country to achieve these goals, we need about 52.2 billion. This is not just infrastructure, this is the entire 17 goals annually. Again, I'm not going to bore you with where we are now, but what I can tell you is that we are very far from that. I think when the economist spoke, she was very detailed and gave us opportunities. I think those opportunities are clear now. What I want to focus time on is how do we make these opportunities come to life for all of us? We represent institutions. I mean, there are various key stakeholders here. As we are developing our strategies and our objectives, how do we think about these things in a more sustainable manner, right? I think as a country, as participants, we must prioritize our industrial projects, clearly understanding what supports what and sequencing it in a way that helps us. The word collaboration is used a lot, but I don't know about how practically it's done. The point that was made here about demand and supply being away from each other, thinking that one-bedroom homes will be the one that's sought after, but then realize that that communication and collaboration should happen to really prioritize them before, because resources are scarce. So to really use it well, we must plan and know how to use it. Energy is something that I think is important to have, but then what we in Africa have sunlight, almost, I mean, we take it for granted. So really looking for new ways to get our energy mix right is something that we cannot take for granted. I think the pandemic showed us something, and is, I mean, as KPMG as a firm, it's really impacted us significantly. I personally don't like working from home. I don't know how to do that. I don't understand how to do that. But then my team tells me that, Kwame, you are old school. I want to work from home. Now, people believe that they can work from home and be effective. So what we must do is we must take advantage of what is happening globally and make our economy digital. A lot is happening. A lot is coming. From July, I think the Ghana card will be very strong. Has a big impact. It will have a big impact. Those of us who don't recognize that should probably take 10 minutes and think about it. How powerful that is. We can talk all we want about the FDI has gone down, that this has gone down. The question is, what can we do to bring it? Everybody who has money will give it to you only when they believe that that money will be used well or that that money must be given to you. So to really collaborate with international partners, and we know that the money is not here, we must be clear about the value proposition. What is it that we are talking to them about? And they must see that clarity. I mean, this point about the involved private sector, it's really interesting because banks who sit in the discussions like this get very nervous. They get nervous because Bank of Ghana has something called IFRS now that they apply on banks, okay? And if a bank gives you money, the impairments that they have to take is huge. So it's very easy to say that, why are banks not helping the economy? But banks don't operate in a vacuum. They operate with regulations. So, in summary, I mean, developing bankable projects, how do we do that? A point was made about a basic economic principle that states that when private sector fails, again, the government must take charge. Who's the government? Where do they get the resources? And I think we are all aware of the downgrade, the recent downgrade of Ghana. The impact of that downgrade is huge. So it's important that together as people, we create a conducive environment that will make our economy strong. Yofi spoke about the land that he lost. I think a lot of people here, or even more out there, can tell you the legal and regulatory framework that supports, because when anybody is coming to your company to invest or to your country, they look at the corporate governance structures, they look at the legal processes that exist, the bureaucracies. You want to fill a form, somebody will meet you out there and say that, oh, you officially it's 10 cedis, but if you come and see me, it's 3 cedis. People look at that. If you have a simple case against somebody, it takes 100 years to. All these things are significant to how we can generate bankable projects. A lot of things like feasibility studies. So when people come to KPMG, say that, oh, I want to do this project, most of the time, it's a feeling that people have. People work with feelings more than substance. How do you sit down and tell investors or people that this is the right investment? Ghana is the place to be, and this is why. We must develop feasibility studies that supports these infrastructure projects to attract the investments that we want. Again, banking is more than just going to take a loan. There's something called financial engineering, financial structuring. How do we look for intelligent ways to structure projects that are profitable? Not just, I'm going to apply for a bank, for a loan at a bank. We've heard about the mortgage revolution that's coming, which is useful. So there are different ways to finance different things. How do we pick the right financing structure for the right project? In Ghana, if you have a friend and you tell them that let's sign a contract, they'll probably start looking at you differently. Right or wrong? My take on contracts is this: very simple. Contracts only become useful when people stop being reasonable. But they are very important things to have in place to guide actions. A lot of people sign contracts without even understanding what they are signing. How do we develop a process to enhance the effective use of contracts? With regards to third-party allocation, how do we ensure that the right people do the right things? If you ask a lot of the people here who are into practical projects, what they will tell you is that sometimes the biggest challenge they have is to find the right resource to do the right thing. And that's difficult. So we have to develop bankable projects through looking at some of these fundamental points to enable us get where we want to get to. We can't just ask for infrastructure. We can't just want to do banking without understanding the banking principles, without understanding how banks' DNA operate, without understanding financing structures. We must really take our time. And again, there's nothing wrong with calling experts to help you do that. If you don't understand, you won't do it well, all things being equal. So I think for me, I want to summarize by saying that, one, let us all take some time to understand these 17 principles. If you like it or not, ESG is something that is here and is going to stay, and all ESG is environmental, social, and governance principles. These 17 principles is just giving us a framework as people, as organizations, as countries to work to enable us achieve a common goal. Because if you look at the different players that have spoken here, we have similar goals, but we are doing a lot of different things. How do we all think through a lens that's common, like these 17 principles? So those of us who have never heard of this, please just Google it. Very simple to read. And one of the interesting things that you will see is that a lot of them are related. And you can easily tie it to your objectives as a business, as a person, as a country, as an entity. So everything starts with leadership. So let's work together to find the right leadership alignment to the things that we want to achieve in terms of infrastructure. And it cannot only be government. The regulatory framework, the legal framework is super important to drive and put together a bankable project. Choosing the right financing structure is very important to enable you achieve your goals with regards to infrastructure. One of the important things I've heard this morning is a divergence between the demand and the supply side. How do we communicate and collaborate effectively to ensure that the little resources that we have are being used optimally? So opportunities exist for all of us. It's important that we look at these opportunities through a flow, a lens, such as these 17 principles that are here. Then thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. I don't know if GIPC will make these presentations available because all the presentations are quite detailed. And I think that they should be made available somehow. Maybe tweet them. If you don't follow the GIPC on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, it's GIPC Ghana. Follow them now and go to their website as well. You may have a lot more information there. Ladies and gentlemen, the program was planned to begin at 9 and end at 11:30. We began at 9:15. and I have the permission to extend it by 15 minutes so we can capture everything. We have 2 more presentations, and then we'll have a moderator session. But because I know that most of you have the questions, with the moderator session, I may not ask any questions and throw it directly to you so that we work within the time. So if you have any questions from any of the presentations, please write down your thoughts on the booklet in front of you, so that when we get there, we can have precise and concise questions and work within the time. Now, our next presenter, I hardly see him dressed like this. Mostly he's in his helmets, even though he had to get a specially designed helmet for the size of head he has, just like mine. He's very smart, built some of the best homes all across the city, and he's one who has mentored a lot of us. I'm one of the people who have been through his mentorship to build. He will also not allow me to finish the introduction because he knows I'll mention his full name. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome the CEO of Saka Homes, Mr. Kojo Saka. He's going to give us a panoramic view of the industry. Saka.
Thank you, Kojo. Kojo is my travel buddy. We've driven across the country a couple of times. That's what we enjoy doing, and he likes to make things look bigger than they are. I think I have a nice sized head, and I dress like this a lot. For those who know me, you see me dress like this, so don't mind Kojo. A very pleasant good morning to you all distinguished personalities gathered in here. I am grateful for the opportunity to share my thoughts on this very important industry. I thank the GIPC and the UNDP for inviting me here to share my thoughts. After receiving the brief for this morning's deliberations, I zeroed in on the fact that they want me to basically talk about the prospects and challenges as per my experience in local participation in construction and infrastructure in general. I have done this for quite a while, so I think I have something to share. Key on my list of challenges is getting the right labor with the right mindset. It is the most difficult things. For POP work, tiling, plasterboard, most of us use the Togolese. For wood joinery, iron work, most of us go for the Syrians or the Lebanese. Lately, most of us are bringing it in from Turkey. It is not that we don't like to support local industry. Our challenge is the quality of work and the stress you go through dealing with the local artisans. It is my ardent hope that with the revitalization of technical training in Ghana, as per the current, I don't know if it's called TVET, or I've heard it a lot on radio recently, TVET, CTVET, okay. It is my prayer that not only will we teach people technical skills, but we'll also give them the right mindset to focus on finishing and finishing well, to make details matter, and I believe that will help locals get more playing room in our current industry. If you look at our education system, our polytechnics, which usually used to supply us with some technical hands, have currently been converted to universities. And that has created a gap for us, because everybody who comes out of the university, as per my experience, wants to sit in the office. For this work, we don't sit in the office. We're on the ground. We don't wear nice clothes like this. We're in the dirt. So I'm also hoping that that mindset we can work on and change. Long-term and low-interest finance. That is the greatest challenge to locals participating in this industry. Some of you say our houses are expensive. It's because the cost is expensive. We are not that greedy. We don't need much. We are just trying to make a decent return. If, as per the discussions that have gone here today and what I've heard, there are plans to provide us long-term sustainable finance, we'll be able to build for less. If I'm borrowing at 25, 30%, and the development is going to take 18 to 36 months, you already know how much profit I'm going to put on it because of my borrowing. So if we can be provided with long-term, low-interest finance, and in this regard, I think that it has to be purposeful. There has to be a special fund created for this. The pension schemes, the banks can be encouraged to put a percentage of their funding into doing this to help us meet the deficit that the country faces. We import about 95% of all we use for these houses. From roofing, windows, toilets, doors, we import everything. The same way we are assembling cars in Ghana at the moment, I think GIPC, through its network, can consider encouraging companies all over the world to come to Ghana to set up plants to either assemble or manufacture the inputs we need for our industry. We have all the raw materials here to the best of my knowledge. I don't think we are lacking in that area. And if GIPC can add it to their headache and try and get people in that space, it will help push down the prices of houses. Legislation and laws. Have you tried to get a permit for your house recently? You will be shocked. I think we have to standardize our laws when it comes to this area, and it must be made public. I had a rude experience yesterday when I tried to pay for a permit for 12 houses around the Spintex area. I was billed in excess of 240,000 cedis, which is very foreign to me. I've been developing in this space for more than 15 years, and I have never been charged even half of that for developing in East Legon. After back and forth with the engineer for the district, it was reduced to 140,000. I asked him the basis for the reduction, and you know the rest. No. It's my street smartness. One major issue we have, which has been mentioned by many people here today, is land. I have lost land too, so developers also lose land. But it is my ardent hope that with time, we can streamline and regularize our land registration process, one to start with. If it's possible for government to create special land banks that can be used to develop as per the way we want to develop, it is something that we should also consider seriously. I see a lot of land lying fallow in institutions like the University of Ghana, our own Achimota School, and others. If it's the plan of the state to provide housing, as per what you said, I think it's about time we consider partnering with such people to do joint venture partnerships. Assuming we build 1,000 apartments, and we give 200 to the University of Ghana to give to their faculty and staff, and the 80 is used for this program you are promoting, we will have the houses closer to town, and hopefully it will help satisfy a need. So this is something that I think we can consider, and I'm just using Achimota School and University of Ghana as examples. There are many other places where we have a lot of land, and I'm talking about land that is just lying there, that if we are not careful, it will be encroached on like the Achimota School land has been encroached on. It's been encroached on. You people have taken it, calling it Golf Hills. It's our school farm. In my humble view, addressing these challenges as suggested will go a long way to help us make these prospects a reality. Let us consciously purpose as a people to create a paradigm shift and stop the rhetorics. We've been talking for a long time. I've met Kwejo at countless seminars to say what we are saying here today. I pray that after today, we'll stop talking and see more action. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. Another round of applause for Saka. I don't know, but I can only say he's spoken for me. Yes, he said a lot of the things that people like us who aspire to be commercial farmers and real estate developers want to hear. Land issues, regulation. The house I live in, I applied for a permit. I kept going to the assembly. They gave me something, a bill, I paid. Waiting for permit. Permit wasn't coming. 3 months later, I started building because the regulation says if you apply and you don't hear from the assembly, you can build, right? Then somebody came to write, stop work. The next thing I knew, they were taking all the wheelbarrows and everything away. And to go and get it back, you have to pay somebody. Still permit not in. Then you build a lintel level, stop work, and they'll break it small. And to have your peace of mind, you go and pay something small. And you build, then one day they'll come with police that they've arrested your boys for violating the law. So you pay. By the time you are done, you'd have paid like 3-4 times what you were actually supposed to pay for the permit. And if I have to sell, I'll add it to my cost and sell so that we'll say in Ghana, houses cost so much. So I think he's spoken for us. The final person, if you are religious, you know that it is God, it is Allah, it is Ochedi Ampon who creates. And the building industry or the infrastructure industry is an industry for creators. So the final person is a vessel that the Lord uses to create and build. But this time, he's also in the policy and the governance space. From the Ministry of Works and Housing, please help me welcome the Director, Reverend Stephen Yawase.
Thank you very much, Kojo. Good morning to you all. Kojo, the Bible has said that in Luke 9:58, that foxes have holes, bears have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. That is why we are gathered here, to make sure that we help Jesus Christ to provide houses for the people of Ghana. Thank you very much. The topic for today is so urgent, and I'm speaking for my minister who is attending to a duty outside the jurisdiction. That is bridging Ghana's housing deficit. So we'll look at the current housing situation, the objective for the medium term, framework for revised standard affordable housing program, other existing incentives. And then we'll look at the regulatory institutional framework, and we'll conclude. The current housing situation, as you can see, there's rapid urbanization that has made housing one of the critical challenges facing the country. If you look at the graph, from 1990, we're somewhere around 30 million, 2000 to about 35, 2010, that was about 40-something. Now at 21, the population and housing census is putting the figure at 56.7. That's almost 58% of the population lives in the urban centers. And this has put a lot of stress on housing. And there have been various attempts by governments in the past to address the issue, but it's making little impact. The housing sector has not adequately met the housing needs of the masses, especially the low to middle income group. And from the census that was recently conducted, that the deficit is now 1.8 million housing units. And these have made accessibility and affordability key factors in the subsector. Now, what you see on the screen is Old Fadama. And because of stress on housing, these are some of the things that we are seeing in Asan, in Abuja in Accra, not in Lagos. Yeah, these are some of the things that we are seeing. You know, urban sprawl, and this is causing slum. We are talking of housing deficit. There are some of our private partners like Mr. Saka and others are doing well. They are building houses. And there are a lot of people who also need the houses. But there is a difference between demand and effective demand. The fact that you need a house doesn't mean that you can enter. You need to do the needful. And the census that was conducted recently, it came out that 12.7% of units are vacant in Accra, unoccupied. Meanwhile, they are up for sale. But people don't have the means to acquire them. So it means that those in the lower and middle income have been priced out of the sector. Now, we did a survey with Ghana Statistical Service, UN Habitat, and GTZ. We found out that only 5% of Ghanaians can own their houses without any support. 5%. That those in Trasako, Laboni, Saka homes, yes. They have deep pockets, 5%. Now 60% will need some form of assistance through government intervention. 35%, even with government support, cannot own their homes. So there's a need for government to do something to assist those who need support and those who can also support themselves. Only 5% out of the equation, which makes the issue very scary. Now, in the medium term, the objective of government is to bring or come out with closer collaboration with the private sector by creating an enabling environment conducive for investments into the housing. And these are some of the framework, the policies that the ministry has come out with. We have the supply side and the demand side. With the supply side, now the policy shift is that government is providing land banks for developers. So currently, there's a project that is going to be launched very soon at Pokuasi, Amasaman, and then the Deswa in Kumasi. Government has secured land banks for private developers, and government is also providing infrastructure, roads, electricity, water, sewage. And that, as Dela said, will go a long way to reduce the ultimate price of the units. And also with GIPC and the Ministry of Finance, with the assistance of Parliament, providing tax incentives to and exemptions. These are the supply side of the equation. At the demand side, we are looking at credible mortgage system, as Dela came and explained. And then a number of rent-to-own schemes. We've seen that some people, no matter what you do, they cannot own their own homes. They will rent till they die. It's not a curse from God, but that's how the system is. So we have to provide opportunities for such people to rent. So the ministry, we are coming out with what we call district housing program. And this is purely for rental purposes. And the private sector can take advantage of this. As a pilot scheme, we want to start with a scheme in each of the 16 regions. And we are going to build about 500 units in each of the regions. And this is purely for rental purposes. So professionals who are posted to the district and find it difficult to access accommodation can easily find such houses and rent. And we are also talking to controller and accountant general. So those who are on payroll and you receive salary through controller, a system will be created where the money is deducted at source. As you leave the place, another person comes in. So private sector, the doors, including the windows, are open. Come to the ministry, and we can have effective collaboration with this district housing program. There's also redevelopment program. Because of neighborhood blight and community decay, a lot of communities are losing population. I remember some years back, Adabraka used to be a very bustling community. But now you go there, the houses are there, people are not in, and the place is not conducive for human habitation anymore. So there's the need for redevelopment. And government has shown the way. In Roma Ridge, those who have been passing there, you've seen that you could see a bungalow sitting on an acre of land. Now we are doing collaboration with the private sector. And I remember we did a scheme. We lost 10 bungalows by receiving 94 units in return. Even though we lost some parcel of land, but in return, we lost 10 by receiving 94, which is better. Government didn't pay any money, even though government lost some land, but in return, we received a lot of housing units. So the redevelopment is ongoing. We have some in Roma Ridge, Latebi Okosi, Laboni, cantonments, and the private sector can take advantage of that and also come to the ministry for discussion. The next opportunity is for security services housing program. We know the security services, the military, the police, Ghana Fire Service, and the rest, prisons, they face a lot of housing challenges. So we started with the BNI. Now they've metamorphosed into NIB. We developed the phase 1 at Committee 3 and built some housing units for them. The phase 2, we developed a housing estate for the Ghana Navy at Tamadu Town. And the phase 3, we are doing about 400 housing units at Tesano Police Station. And government is partnering with the private sector in doing that. So there's a huge opportunity for the private sector to take by developing housing units for the military, the prisons, and other security services. We have other existing incentives that the private sector can take advantage of. There's a 5-year tax holiday for real estate certified low-cost housing. So if you are provided for the high end, then you don't qualify. But if you could certify that this is a low-cost housing, there's a 5-year tax holiday available for you. There's corporate income tax of 1% for the first 5 years for companies investing in affordable housing. Opportunities for exemption of import duty on plants, machinery, equipment, and parts. And some of our private developers, even when they buy papaya, they want tax exemption. It is not part of this. I don't know if you have realized, anytime you travel outside Accra, you reach in Sawom or Imensa, you see that your pressure starts building up. But as you are living, you see that you are having a low, stress. So it's better to live in the countryside. Very important. And once you can demonstrate that you want to site your company outside, let's say Krachi in Chumuru or Asenkegwa, then you will enjoy these tax incentives. There is the review. We have regulatory and institutional framework that currently the ministry is working on. There's a review of the existing rent law. Currently, we all see the rent law as pro-landlord. That tenants are crying every day, and when you get to rent control department, sometimes it results in fisticuffs, people fighting and resulting in bruises. Now, we also have to be careful that we don't come out with laws that will drive away investment in the affordable housing sector. So currently, we drafted something and sent to Cabinet, and we have approval from Cabinet, and we have sent it to Attorney General for drafting. There's also the PPP Act 2020 that's also there to guide the relationship between public and private sector infrastructure services. There's going to be establishment of Ghana Housing Authority that will look at the development of policies, implementation, monitoring, and everything concerning the housing sector. Cabinet has given approval, and the AG is drafting the law. In conclusion, I will say that there's so much investment needed in the housing sector. Investment in safe, secure, affordable housing stock is essential for shelter, health, and increased productivity. A guiding principle for the ministry is to partner with the private sector for provision of such critical infrastructure. The ministry is therefore keen to seize opportunity offered to it for housing infrastructure delivery to bridge the national housing deficit. And the private sector is again invited to come to the ministry, and we'll have a fruitful discussion and assist you to.
Since Reverend began with a quotation from the Bible, I will see him off with one quotation also from the Bible. It's Hebrews 11. It talks about faith, and that with faith we can do everything we can do, right? We want to do, right? I remember it's only in Tree, so I have to Google Hebrews 11 and read in English. But since the children of the Lord don't have anywhere to stay, and GIPC and UNDP have brought us together to think through how we can provide a place for the children to stay. By faith, we can get there. And by faith, we will bridge the housing deficit. Somebody shout hallelujah. Amen. Inshallah, next year when we get here, the statistics will be different. And so as we end the month of Ramadan, our Muslim brothers and sisters, take that also into prayer, so that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam will also help us to get what we need as a country. Army. Okay. So we are going to have the panel session. We just have about 15 more minutes to wrap up. So we'll bring the chairs up and I invite the panelists to join me up here. It's not going to be about me. You get to ask the questions because we've had about 6 or 7 presentations. I know some of you have a lot of questions or comments to pass. So we'll give you the opportunity to ask questions, and also if you have any comments, any additions, you can do that. And then after that, we'll wrap up. So I'd like to invite Dela back, Mr. Dela Zumanu, National Home Ownership Fund. Please join me back on the stage. Mr. Kwame Banye from KPMG, please join me as well. And Mr. Kojo Saka, please join me. We just need 5 seats. You don't need to put, so these are 6, so take 1 out. And finally, I would like to invite a man through whom I learned about mortgages. You know, in Ghana, when you talk about free kicks that break people's hearts, it's Asamoah Gyan. When you talk about concert parties in Komode, when you talk about investment, Charlie, the GMPC boss who brings a lot of swagger to investment, it is Yofi. Or bonus suit, fine. When you talk about homegrown policies, you remember your finance ministers, all of them will talk about homegrown policies. But when you talk about mortgage financing, it is only one name which rings a bell, because he, I think, if I can't say he's the godfather of the industry, he's the engine of the industry. He's also going to join us. But before he sits, I'd like him to summarize everything we've heard and also add his comments and give us the magic bullets that will take us home. And then you can all get to ask questions. So please, with a resounding round of applause, let's invite the one and only Mr. Kojo Ado Kofor to join us. Executive Head, Mortgage Business at FNB Bank. Oh, Mr. Ado Kofor, I thought you come through here. You like here? Okay. But that's your mic.
Good morning, all, once again. So, in terms of comments, I think I should first start by saying that I've sat in several such sessions, and I think both Kujos have alluded to that. But for the first time, I'm really encouraged by the direction of the commentary. I'm encouraged by the fact that, for the first time, I think there's a general realization, especially on the part of government, that this is a demand-driven conversation. Successive governments have tried to attack it from the supply side, hence a lot of the affordable housing projects, which have ended up being not so affordable, and some of them abandoned. It is a demand-side problem, and I think my friend Dela dimensioned that perfectly. Also, for the first time, there's real private sector engagement in the conversation. There's no way government can do this alone, for the simple reason that halfway through the project, governments change hands and the project gets abandoned or somebody else goes off in a different direction. So it has to be private sector led. And I think that realization has come through very strong this morning. I'm very encouraged by the conversation from UNDP, GIPC. You know, there's a real collaboration and we all seem to be pulling in the right direction. So that gives me hope. In terms of the industry, our benchmark for at least the home loans, the mortgage, potential mortgage business is somewhere around 10% of GDP. So if you believe GDP to be around $70 billion, we are talking about a $7 billion industry. Can anybody tell me where we are right now? Does anybody have any idea? 7 billion, where are we in that? 7 billion. It's 10% of GDP. So we should be around 7 billion. Okay, we are nowhere near there. We are somewhere around 500 million at best. That's the total mortgages outstanding as a percentage to GDP. It should be around 10% of GDP, we'll be lucky to hit 1%. So there's a lot of work to be done. But I think everything we've heard this morning points to the fact that we are heading in the right direction. Maybe not fast enough. And my friend Kojo Saka really outlined all the issues that I had even listed before he spoke, going through the court process. I really want to touch on two of these, the courts and land title registry, because for most of us in the industry, that's where we have the greatest level of pain. You give a loan, it goes bad, case ends up in court, and you could literally be there for years. And we have cases that have gone on 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Simple matters to be determined, it just drags on and on. That affects pricing. So when people talk about pricing in the market, you need to understand that financial institutions always factor the cost of recovery, how long it takes when a loan goes bad. The other bit is determining who owns a parcel of land, right? So you can do a search. One, it takes forever to come. Two, sometimes the same institution gives you two answers to the same question. Who owns this parcel of land? One unit says it's A, the other unit says it's B. You can't make any meaningful progress with that kind of affairs. And even when you've determined who owns the land and you bought it, when you try to transfer title into your name, you could be there for years. So your money is gone, you've bought the asset, but it's not in your name, and it's taking forever for you to do that. It is that, what do they call it, lacuna, that gap where your money is gone, but it's still in the name of the previous owner that allows people to sell, and then you get the multiple purchases, etc. A lot of work has been done in that direction. We are still struggling in that respect. So there's some fundamental issues which still bedevil the industry, but as I said, if I have to come up with an overarching theme, I think is the fact that all the players, all the key players, especially government, recognize the key parameters. So I'm very encouraged. So I think I'd like to just end on that note, and I'll take my seat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kojo Adokofo. So we are bringing the conversation to an end. This is a GIPC-UNDP event. At this point, we have 4 of the speakers here. And if you have any questions, if you have any comments, I don't want to hijack the conversation. I want us to 10 minutes. So if you have any questions or comments, kindly get up. We are fixing a microphone there. You mention your name and your institution, and you go ahead. Also know that we have forms on your tables. If there is a company or institution you want to meet, kindly fill the form. GIPC will facilitate that so that you get to meet them and carry forward the conversation. So if you have any questions, you are allowed to take the microphone, mention your name, your institution, and go ahead. So we have a first person. Please, go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Sairam. I'm with the GIPC. My first question is to Dela. The National Home Ownership Fund. Well, personally, and a few of my colleagues, we don't seem to be familiar with the fund. So my question is, how do we, as Ghanaians, know about you, your existence, and what you do or what you offer us? And are you accessible to individuals or just companies? My second question is for the Ministry of Works and Housing. The director mentioned certified low-cost housing to have access to the incentives that he mentioned. My question is, who is the certifying institution? Who certifies that this particular project qualifies as low-cost housing? Thank you.
Yeah, when the next person comes, we'll take.
National Home Ownership Fund started as a pilot project because, like I said, at the Ministry of Finance around 2018, it became obvious to us that there was a code we couldn't crack when it came to affordable housing, and we didn't understand why that was the case since independence. And so a little survey, a little research, and then we got to the state where we understood that the solution really was not supply-driven, but demand-driven, even though both ends of the equation were important. And based on which we did a pilot to understand exactly what the situation is like. And so, as I speak with you now, we have become a government SOE, you know, sitting at the Ministry of Finance as our anchor owner. But we are on our own now, and we've set up, we have our own offices, we have a website, and two things. We deal more with the banks to facilitate the mortgage financing by blending government funding with private sector market fund to bring the blended fund or blended rate a little below market. And so in our last project, we did 12% with GCB Bank, with the project we did with TDC at Community 22, when indeed market was almost between 18 and 22, depending on which bank you were dealing with. And so we do not deal with individuals. We drive the demand side with banks. And we work with Republic Bank, GCB Bank, Stanbic Bank. Indeed, FNB Bank was one of the banks we were going to start with in the pilot, but I think they had to deal with some regulatory matters, so they couldn't join us. But by the end of this quarter, they should be formally with us because they have quite a huge experience like Republic. So if you want to enjoy any of the products we have, any of these banks will be your first point of call, and then we work directly with the banks, and then we can support the mortgage acquisition, making sure that you get rates that are below market. Thank you.
Another question, Reverend. So I'll take the microphone to him. Reverend.
Yeah, thank you very much. The certifying institution, as the questioner asked, you know, before you invest, you need to go through some processes. GIPC, the Minister of Works and Housing. Now, the final cost is what we are using to determine whether it's affordable housing or not. Just like the last said, that time when they finished the product, the 210 was about $30,000 or $29,000. So there's a benchmark. If it's between 29,000, 30,000, 32,000, that could be considered affordable for two-bedroom house. But if it's beyond, if you are going for $400,000, then definitely it's not an affordable housing unit. So GRA, you know, through Minister of Finance and others will certify whether it's indeed affordable housing unit, and then you can qualify for the incentive. Thank you very much.
Okay, I have a question and a comment. And it's to do with title. And we all know that successive governments have spent millions and millions of dollars on a land administration project, which hasn't come out with with a clear solution, because it's a very complex problem. So my position is land is an asset that gains value over time. But we have people, and this is on a national character, we have people who have lands and hold it for years, doing nothing with it. This question goes to either Reverend or any of whatever. Do you think it's a good idea that recognizing that it's an asset that appreciates and depreciates, that perhaps government should tax all titled non-used land to eliminate the crisis we have with land ownership? I mean, people who have lands, and like you said, like I said in the beginning, I bought a piece of land for 3 times, and I'm not even sure I still own it. I don't think I own it anyway, it's gone. But is there a possibility that we can actually immunize the buyer of a piece of land from all the problems that we are seeing today? And I'm saying so in the context that we've spent millions and millions of dollars trying to come up with the land administration, a solution out of the land administration project. And today, people are still, just yesterday, a friend called me. He's bought some property in Ibri. He was just walking on the land when he was chased off. And he thought there was a lion or something coming. He didn't know what was going on. People said, well, you're on somebody's land. I said, but I just paid for it. So you've wasted your money, thrown your money away. So we have all these problems. And for me, I think once we start doing these, they are not punitive, but to make sure that since it's an asset that is depreciating or appreciating, the appropriate taxes are charged on it. So if it's just sitting down, not doing anything, and only appreciating in value, then there must be a tax levied on that appreciation of value. I would be happy to hear what the ministry thinks, or any of you operators in the sector.
Whilst Reverend comes up, please, your name and your question.
So my name is Eugenia Archer. I'm also with the GIPC. My question, I don't know if it's really a question, but let me go ahead. It's to UNDP and probably KPMG. The 9.3 billion or 9.6 billion, just to clarify, is it annually or by the 2030 or 2040 we are talking about?
So it's annual.
Annual? Wow.
Annual, yes.
Wow. So out of the 9.3, how much have we estimated for the housing sector? Do we know? Is that available?
So I don't have an exact breakdown, but just through infrastructural segmentation, I would assume probably be minimum 20% of that.
Okay, so I'm here and I'm thinking we're here to talk about the housing infrastructure sectors, identifying opportunities, and a lot has been said. But I think what we can take away from where I stand and going to be able to achieve this target that we're looking at, if we can pin some numbers to it, per the sectors that we've been talking about, and find out which projects can contribute to that, I think that would be helpful for our private sector and also for GIPC and other stakeholders who are at the forefront trying to make sure that this happens. This is what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Rev, Yofi asked the question earlier, should we tax land which is lying fallow and appreciating in value year on year?
Thank you very much. Okay, Yofi, this question is very sensitive, and it falls squarely under the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. I will not try to be more Catholic than the Pope. So let's because of the sensitivity of it, I think we need a broader stakeholder consultation to discuss it. And let's refer it to the Lands Ministry, and they can do something about it. Thank you. I'm
wondering what KPMG or industry, like somebody like Saka, thinks. Because sometimes you spend money to build a nice estate, somebody leaves some bushy land beside yours, but your construction adds value to the neighborhood. This person just keeps the land, keeps it, and one time he comes and he says $1 million.
I just spent some time thinking about it, and I think it's a very good idea because it's going to eradicate a lot of our land problems, especially if it comes with punitive measures such as if you don't pay your land tax for 5 years, you lose your land to the government. Then a lot of people, because a lot of these are land problems. Currently, there's a trend going on. I'm sure most of you here have experienced it in one way or the other. Let me use Accra because this is where I developed. So Adukwe sells land to Mr. Grant in 2010 at Labadi. And it's happening to me now. After you buy the land from Adukwe, you pay him and he goes away. Maybe you are not ready to develop. You keep the land for a couple of years. Next thing you know, Atukwe comes that Adukwe didn't have the right to sell you the land. Atukwe takes Adukwe to court. Because Adukwe has already taken your money, he shows a poor representation in court or doesn't show up at all. Next thing, there's a default judgment against Adukwe. Adukwe brings land gas to your land, saying that he owns the land and he's possessing the land. Back and forth, and the security services are not helping in this area. I'm speaking specifically Chado area, East Legon. They are in bed with these guys, they harass you, and nobody seems to be able to do anything about it. If these things are not taken care of, 10 years on, we'll still be sitting here and talking like this. Thank you.
KPMG, any thoughts on this? Should we tax land?
Tax is an interesting discussion. I think fundamentally, the reason for tax is not necessarily to rake in money, but to bring around structure and to help optimize the use of the assets. I think it's a positive discussion that we must have. And as Rev said, we need to really outline the rationale behind that. But from my personal perspective, I think it's a good discussion to have, and we should consider it to ensure that we optimize the use of assets. And I think it's very simple. If you look at banks, for instance, what can banks take as security? If we go through this trajectory and outline some of these positive points, it will help people in accessing funds and also being able to transact value from these lands.
Okay. Now, before you come, let me ask a simple question. We are talking about value funds. This morning, I got an email from SNIT with my statement. Statement begins in the year 2008. I've been paying power. And I'm looking at the value here, and then I checked my tier 2 with Petra, and I looked at the value there, and I'm asking myself, if I want to buy a house, what opportunity do I have to use my pension fund, money that is being held for me after my retirement, to make my life better now and more productive, to probably earn more? What opportunities are there to use pension funds, fund some of these things? Kojo, I know that's your area, or yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, there are opportunities to use both your tier 2 and tier 3 to acquire property. Tier 3 is slightly easier because it's voluntary, so you can easily extract that. There might be tax implications on your way out, but you can do that. Tier 2 is slightly more difficult to access, but the opportunities exist, is the short answer to your question.
But beyond the individual level, should we have a policy where, because I know that some of the pension funds are trying to put money in some of these venture capital firms to be able to patient capital to businesses and all that. Should we not look at how we are going to use pension funds in general, because they are patient capital, to fund housing and infrastructure?
Yeah, okay, I think I'll let the pension funds speak for themselves, but I can tell you one thing: they are not patient capital. They are long-term capital, but they are not by any means patient in the sense that they have a return expectation to meet. When all of us in this room give our monies to the pension fund managers, we want the maximum possible return. And that's normally T-bill plus. Because if it's T-bill, you can do it yourself. You want something slightly more sexy than T-bill. And so they are not about giving money out on a subsidized basis. They are not about giving out money on a charity basis. They are constantly being challenged to give the best possible return. So any notion that they will give money at next to 0%, for me, it's a non-starter, because that's not their mandate. They have principals who are asking them to deliver the best return. There might be a general government directive that requires them to do that, but that's slightly something different. But on their own, their natural format for the highest return. Because I think the premise of your question was you're comparing what Petra had done versus what SNIT had delivered. And obviously, in the private sector space, it's a challenge. Everybody wants to give the best possible one. Okay. Before I hand over, I just want to add to my voice to the comments on Yofi's suggestion. I think it's a brilliant idea. I love it. I mean, it's going to be difficult to implement, but it introduces transparency in terms of ownership. To pay tax on the land, you've got to show you are the owner. And that whole mystery about who owns it at any point in time is taken away. Somebody has to implement it. It's not me.
Thank you. So we'll take a final question, and then we'll come back for a round of final comments, and then we wrap up. Sir.
Okay. My name is Kojo Baini. I am a property developer. A lot has been said today, and it's all, putting things where they should be. But I want to pick up, before I ask my question, on Mr. Yofi Grant's suggestion. I think the mechanism actually exists when it comes to rates, and the rate collection, which is now being seriously looked at, could be easily tweaked to cover land if it already doesn't cover it. So I think that's one thing, one way of looking at it. Number two, I think my question is more to everyone in here. Everyone is talking about off-takers and people taking mortgages and so on, but no direction or no policy direction is properly being focused in the area of rental. Okay, and rental is a big off-take in itself. In countries like Germany, you find very few people owning property. You have huge housing associations and so on who own the properties, and the rich people rent. So, and by doing that, they have a lot more money to go on holidays. So it's something that we need to refocus where we are going and think, longer term, because our earning power, okay, is not favoring the buying of houses. And if we are going to keep forcing the situation, we're struggling. We're struggling. So we need to refocus and think about the rental market and how to harness that market and aggregate it so that it becomes meaningful, the figures become meaningful. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. So, Della.
We didn't have enough time. I didn't tell you about our rent-to-own product. And like I said, we did some survey and realized that using just the public sector, almost 80%, like the statistic I shared, could not even take a mortgage with their salaries based on the prices. At the time, we were even working with 140,000 cedis for a 2-bedroom house. We got very scared. Then the alternative was that we're still thinking, how can people still, get homes? So we thought about a rent-to-own scheme. And we set up one with GCB Capital. And so those of you who have been in the market, you would have heard GCB Rent-to-Own or GCB REITs. Now, what we intended to do was to serve that market of almost 80% to say that if you cannot buy or mortgage, then you could rent and later own. But the structuring of the ownership bit was a little tricky because it's even worse than the mortgage, because you have to pay down rent and also pay down equity so that you could be releasing yourself off the cost of the house. But what we have done actually as a pilot is say, let's do a pure rental scheme and see. And so what do? We bought some houses at the affordable housing, which is now being developed by TT, and rented it out to ordinary workers within the Tema enclave. Most of them are coming from the Tema General Hospital. And I agree with you, sir. But the problem here is about cultural issues. Every Ghanaian must own a home to show he has arrived. And he just doesn't want to own a home. He wants to own a home with a big compound where he can pan fufu, or he can, do some gardening or something like that. So even apartments are not very much your kind of homes that people want, because then he's thinking about, where is my space? I've bought a house, but I don't own it, kind of. So we have cultural nuances that are also affecting the sector in terms of delivering what kind of product works. But I'm happy to say that because we have a large, middle income growth within the economy, and also a lot of our population are within that bracket, we are hopeful that they'll begin to love the apartment concept because it's ish and it's, that's what everybody is doing and all that. And there, by so doing, we'll be dealing with the cultural issues gradually. But I agree with you that rental is another area we must consider and look at critically, because it helps you to get a place to stay without necessarily thinking about ownership and all that. The other thing is that because our law leaves, and when they leave, even taking care of the place to re-rent is like using half of your new advance to, and now that we are pushing the case where we don't take more than 3 months advance and all that, it really makes that market very unattractive to the investor who builds his house, because when he rents, the rental incomes really are not very, very exciting as compared to selling it off or doing a mortgage where he gets paid and he goes to another property to develop. So there are these matters that I believe on a broader scale, we need to think about how we can create incentives for people to go in there and build large tracts of apartments that people can rent, and then these things can happen. Thank you.
So I'll now take final words from each of the panelists. So, Kojo. You have one more question? Okay, Mr. Grant has one more question. So,
my question is to Mr. Saka. When you're pricing your properties, realizing that in Ghana we don't do very much with property rates. I mean, property that you have to pay every month. Do you price it into the house? Because are you as the developer who owns the property, are you charged that property rate?
Yes, annually we pay property rates. When we are pricing houses, we don't factor that in. It's something that, for instance, if it's a new build and I'm building for you, I will pay the rate for a year. Once I hand over to you, the rate becomes your headache.
Okay, so Saka, your final words then.
Unfortunately, I don't have any final words.
For me, I really want to thank UNDP for leading this country financing roadmap. I think it's something very interesting that we need to really look to understand what it seeks to do. And fundamentally, I think it's clear with regards to the financial needs that we have to meet the goals. And the reason why I've been talking about these goals is that I think it's a unique tool to help us think about sustainability and think about development in a way that helps collaboration. So that's one. The second point also, I think one of the major challenges that we've spoken about today is financing, right? There are various forms of financing, and I think maybe to Yofi, let's have some real discussions with some financial players, with the big four, to really educate people on the different financing options that exist, to help the banks offer their best, because depending on what you want to do, the kind of financing that you should be seeking and the kind of information that you should be putting together, it's different. So I think having that education is very useful. And maybe my last point, which I'm passionate about, is a lot of people want so many things, but they don't have anything to show for who they really are, right? So let's use this opportunity to improve our documentation, our governance processes, to help us assess the financing. And for instance, even if you go and look for things at this new entity that's set up by the government, they'll ask you for certain information. Do you have it? Can you show it to help you assess that? So thank you very much.
Yeah. So my final points. Look, I'm passionate about housing. I think anybody who's read that book, Mystery of Capital, will understand what distinguishes rich countries from poor countries. And really, it's land, it's property ownership, right? So I'm totally passionate, and anybody who knows the kind of stuff we do will know what I mean when I say this. So I'm very excited by gatherings like this. Unfortunately, the time is too short to really get into the mechanics of some of the points raised here. But I've really enjoyed myself this morning, and I think we should keep having engagements like this one. But to really move this country forward, we need revolutionary ideas. I mean, we can't keep kind of crawling along. No. The tax, I think it's revolutionary. I think another revolutionary idea is what Rev touched on, which is decentralization. The reason why land in Accra is so expensive is that if you draw a 2 square mile radius standing at National Theatre, that's where it's all happening. All the regulatory institutions, all the financial institutions, all the markets, all the churches, everything is there, right? So the pressure on real estate closer to these parts of town is immense, and it kind of goes out in a concentric manner. If we find a way of really decentralizing Accra, it takes a bit of tough decisioning, but moving even some ministries outside, then it gives people a reason to want to live in, I don't know, Akosombo or Ho or somewhere else. If the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is based in Kumasi, you have to go to Kumasi. All of a sudden, the pressure releases. Because sometimes when you do that, we've done surveys such as this one, and you realize sitting in Accra, you get a skewed view on the housing market. Because everything here is so hot, you tend to extrapolate that across the country. But there are some interesting points that we can share if we get into more details on this one. But decentralization in the true sense is one that we should look at to reduce pressure on housing in Accra. The other one is the fact that, I love my developer friends. I mean, Saka is my main man right here. We hang out a lot and everything. But even when you add everything all the developers put together, it's nowhere near the volume of supply that comes from individuals, self-builds. And I think it was touched on several times this morning, the number of uncompleted units spread across the country, right? Everybody starts building. At some point, they run out of money or something causes them to stop. When you dive in, as we had to when we were trying to raise funding, by the way, we have a product for that. If you're looking for money to build your house, there's a loan that you can take to build. The reason why people don't take the loan is because of some of the reasons Saka touched on. Building permits, planning permission, zoning, it's a mess. People start building without getting some of these things. When they go subsequently to get the paperwork to come for a loan, that's when they realize where their house is situated has been zoned for a sports complex or something. There's no way you can get a loan on the back of that. So there are all kinds of dynamics that play out in there. But I think we really need to double click on that to find out why a reasonable, rational person starts building and abandons the project at some stage. It's not because they are challenged upstairs. There are real reasons. Sometimes the case get taken to court, and when you go to court, you know how that plays out. But that's the majority of the market. And I think we really need to pay attention to that at a similar but different forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kojo. Finally, I'll come to you, Reverend.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited about this conference, and we need to show appreciation by clapping for Mr. Ayofre Grant and others. When you have serious mind gathered at such forums to discuss issues of national development. Condominium living or communal living is here with us, and it has come to stay. Gone are the days where you have 1 acre land with 1 bungalow. It's not going to happen again. Because the per capita cost of infrastructure is cheaper in communal living than to have individual houses. That is why we should all chart that cost. Thank God that the ministry is leading the process. A lot of financial institutions has approached the ministry to give credible mortgage, to Ghanaians in collaboration with the Dela's group. Especially EcoBank, made us aware that they could handle the second tier of, salary workers to form as a guarantee, to get a good mortgage for housing units. And if that is piloted well and succeed, it means that even though your normal basic salary might be low, you can use your second tier, your tier, to supplement what you have to get you a good mortgage. And that will be the way for the demand side. So that a lot of these housing units could be rolled out. And with the help of people like Kojo, we can get a lot of houses for our people. The doors of the ministry is open to the private sector. Anytime you want to contact us, you are welcome. And then we'll sit down, have a chat, and see the way forward how to develop housing for Ghanaians. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Reverend. Ladies and gentlemen, I think our panelists have been great today, and I want us to show another appreciation for them with a round of applause. Gentlemen, you may take your seats now. Thank you. Wow. If this were an academic exercise, I'm sure that GIPC could just give all of us diplomas in housing and infrastructure and we take away, because there's been a lot of things said today. But there is still more to be done. There's an opportunity for you to talk to the different businesses here. Like I said, we have forms on our tables, and if I think I'm allowed to run through the names of the businesses so that you know who to talk to. We have ACOM here. We have National Home Ownership Fund, First National Bank. Greda is here. ECG is here. Ghana Revenue Authority, Smart Ghana Limited, the Ministry of Finance, CRS Plants Ghana Limited, GASEM Limited, the Nation Builder. GASEM is also here. We have Comanex Investment Limited, Lakeside Estates, B5 Plus. B5, we should call them Dadieba, because when it comes to the metal industry in the country at the moment, B5 is leading, so Dadieba, Sons and Daughters of Steel. We have Yantai Aquaculture Products Company Limited. We have 3.7 Realty, K Zori Properties Limited, Diamond Cement Ghana Limited, the Builder's Choice, Sonia Hotels. We have the GIIF, Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. We have Dar Handasa. Saka Homes is here. Unispan Ghana Limited. Comet Properties. We have Henwick Enterprise, Regimano Concrete Products, Justmo Construction, Zingri International Development Company Limited, PM Renaissance, Group Crematin, Dalai Steel Industries, Asafotu Chambers, Hydroponics Limited, Success for My People MFI, Ghana Startup Network, Guardian Ghana Limited, Shinfield Ghana Limited, UNDP, Arium Company, and other companies are here. We also have amazing company, Dangote Takrady Cement Limited, Dangote for West Africa, Waylead Company Ghana, Linfra Ghana, Daily Graphic, Ghana Ports and Harbors, Societe Generale, Ministry of Works and Housing, and other companies. So if you want to talk to any of these companies, you fill the form. The team from GIPC will facilitate for you to talk to any of these businesses so that we can start the conversations beyond the conversation to get the work done on the ground. At this point, I'd like to invite Mr. Grant. He's the welcome address, ask questions, make contributions, give you more insight, and also give you the closing remarks. Please, Mr. Grant.
Thank you very much, Kojo. Thank you so much. Indeed, I have to express my appreciation to all of you for making this a very vibrant, lively, and important meeting. I would first also like to applaud all the speakers. They were amazing, and they really did give us a lot of food for thought. And then, of course, the panelists who were brilliant in their submissions on the questions asked. My only disappointment is that Reverend burst my bubble. I was hoping that one day I'll have my 1 acre and put my house in the middle somewhere. But it looks like it's not going to happen. Oh, you see, opportunity. Maybe, yes, I'll have to go maybe somewhere. I mean, somebody told me that, too expensive. Somebody told me that the best place, if you want real nice real estate, is the Volta region. They have very nice properties there. So maybe I can go and get my 1 acre there. You see, this is what I like about private sector. Because even with all the challenges, in any situation, there's opportunity. And that's what the partnership between government and private sector is. Because we've all said government cannot do this all by itself. Government is very unlikely to find the 9.3 billion required every year to up our infrastructure game. And of that, some maybe 2 billion should go to housing if we are to meet the deficit and then looking forward. But the private sector stands ready so far as we clear all the bureaucratic bottlenecks along the pathway or the value chain of property development. And this is what this meeting here today is about. That we should start to think of ways to make it easier to build, to make it cheaper to build, and to make it accessible. And rightly said, I'm not sure which of the speakers said, maybe Mr. Adukufor, because he's in that space. It's not everybody who will afford a home or can own a home. It was Reverend Osofo. I thought you were going to prophesy that everybody will make a home, but it's what it is. That's the reality. Not everybody may be able to own a home, but everybody must live somehow. So the rental space is also very important, and it's also another opportunity for the private sector to contribute to decreasing the stock of, in fact, increasing the housing stock or the home stock. I'm also very pleased to know that there are quite a number of companies here, some private sector, some government. But I'll urge all of you to go to our social media handles. We are on Twitter, we are on Facebook, we are on LinkedIn, we are on Instagram. Post your comments, post your questions, and on the sheets that you have, write who you want to meet. As a GIPC, it's to make things happen. We make things happen. We are supposed to bring investors in, but we also believe that there are investors already here who opportunities can be availed to them. So I would like to say a very big thank you to all of you. Let's keep this conversation alive, and let's keep going. Who knows, out of this, maybe somebody sitting here who thought you may never have a home would find a home. So thank you very much for coming. I hope you enjoyed the breakfast. Unfortunately, we can't do lunch, although it's 12 o'clock, because you have to go to work. So thank you very much for coming. And to our host and our MC, thank you so much. You conducted it in a very nice, convivial, and rewarding and enriching way. But we know you will be back again on the stage as our in the SDG Investment Map. We will have other meetings like this, not necessarily in infrastructure and construction, but in the other sectors that are mentioned in the Ghana Cares Obatampa program, as well as what we've discussed with the UNDP. But if you have any issues, any questions, please go to our social media handles and post them there. And we are always ready to assist you or answer your questions or facilitate any issues that you have. We have a very dynamic aftercare unit at GIPC, and that is to enable us preempt problems as well as help solve some of the problems that investors in the economy have, both domestic and foreign. So we'll be your best friend in the business sector, so let's keep that friendship alive. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day and afternoon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grant, and another round of applause for him. He's the man who is always on the ground making sure things work, and it's great to work with him. Now, Mr. Grant, I also have a pitch. If Kojo Saka offers you a building in a Bri on 1 acre, it will cost you maybe roughly 500,000. If you want it high-end, $1 million, right? And then he said he'll take you to Mepe. I can also take you to Mepe and use $500,000 of that to do a 1,500-acre outgrower scheme on rice, which we will call Yofi rice. The remaining 500 acres, I'll use 200,000 to build you a house. The 300,000 will be invested in aquaculture, and we'll get you a small speedboat. You see the whole thing. So he's my mentor, but I have outpitched him. Thank you all very much for coming. I've been asked to pray, so I'll pray. My name is Joseph, and Joseph is addition, Joseph is blessing, Joseph is action. So I pray that the Almighty blesses whatever it is that our intentions are to make the housing and infrastructure sectors better, to drive national development, to give all of us a better life, And the next time we come here, I hope and pray that our reviews will all be positive, and everything that any person touches from here will turn to gold. If it's 5 houses you want to build, I pray that you sell them in the next month, recoup your money, and build 10 more. If it's a land title you are looking for, may the Spirit of the Lord touch the Lands Commission for the systems to work. If it's funding you are looking for, may Kojo Adogofo not look at your proposal and say, and if it's partnership you are looking for, may the Spirit touch all of our hearts and put us together to build together. Amen. Enjoy the rest of your day. God bless you.